Josh alluded to, we have very different needs from Squadron and from Star Citizen. And from this point of view, for the character armor, we have on Squadron, quality is everything. We want to get the absolute maximum quality. And when it comes to Star Citizen, normally in an MMO, you would take some type of sacrifice from the quality, so you could get the customization and the flexibility to get the scale that you need. But we type of need both of them for both projects. We need absolute quality on both, and we need flexibility on both. So after realizing this, we decided to make some bespoke tech to handle the armor and the clothing, and that's what we call the layer blend shader. So the main concept of this is we initially take a character, and then we'll slice them up and try and find all the areas that will be, say, certain metal, aluminum, or aluminum, I guess, and all your different levers and cloth, and we mask them all out in textures like this, with each colors representing a different type of material. And then, rather than 5 years ago, what you might have done in a game is to make one texture for your entire character, and it would just you'd mix all the materials on that one texture, but there's a limit to how much quality you can get with that. A texture can realistically only be, say, 4,000 or 8,000 pixels wide. So what we do for all of these layers that we've pulled out individually, all these different materials, we model them individually as high-quality layers. So we'll have a high-quality metal, a high-quality aluminum, a high-quality leather, and so on. And then these different layers all are composited onto this character on top of some unique textures for the character, and then this combining of multiple resolutions is really what gets us the quality. The other benefit of it is it allows us to mix together materials in quite a complicated fashion. So here's some Vandal armor, and you can see that the mask here, rather than being in solid chunks, is actually got blends between multiple different materials together. This is, again, just a visualization of where the layers are, and this is the finished product once we've got all them layers blended together. So you can see all the subtle variations in the metal, and you can see how detailed all the individual textures are. And this is the 5 layers that go into that particular armor. And you can see individually they'll look great on their own, but then once they're put together, you really get the top quality. So each of these, sorry, one thing I didn't mention on the last slide, another benefit we get of this is the shader was written in such a way that we can have almost an unlimited number of these layers, and they all get combined together when we actually do the rendering. So it helps a lot with the performance, and it gives the flexibility that we need for the MMO, so we can have the customization and swap out armor for a different color, different style, different patterns, without taking any performance hit. Okay, each of these layers as well, we have some, this is quite a recent addition in the last couple of months, but we can now have different lighting models for each one of these layers, which means we can control how the light will scatter and more closely resemble the different types of materials in the real world. So the first one is called Clear Coat, which is a simulation of a thin lacquer or layer on top of the material, which you can see on the top side. It's a little bit subtle here, but on the right example, it's quite easy to see. But it gives you like a very tight shine on top of it. And here we've added it to this Vandal armor, and you can type of see like it looks a bit more like car paint. You can type of see a very tight highlight reflection from each of the flat surfaces, as well as a broader reflection from the underlying layer. The next one is a cloth. Again, this is pretty subtle to see on the sphere, but if you look on the edges of it, you get type it on the cloth one, you get like a fuzzy highlight on the edges. On a sphere, it's not a very useful example, but when you see it on the final character, it gives you quite a convincing cloth appearance, which we don't get. And this is something quite new, but we don't have this in the PU now, but it will be coming in for some of the characters starting from 3.3 onwards. And the last one, which we are only just working on now, is subsurface scattering, which is to emulate more waxy materials, like a thick plastic or other things like that. OK, next is the skin. So we've done a lot of work on the skin. We've had one of our excellent graphics programmers in Frankfurt, Nico, be working on the skin for the last few weeks, or a few weeks ago, sorry, he was working on this. And we've made some real strides recently. So if you look at the top model, top image, that's our skin as it appears today. And down below is how it was a couple of years ago. So there's quite a lot of work that went into improving the quality here. The first one was just following the literature for art, which just basically means we had to get a lot more rigorous in our art pipeline. We had to really look at the physical values of how reflective real skin is and how reflective different ethnicities would be, and make sure that when we're making our textures, we're really following the precise type of reflectance you'd get on a real character. And this made a huge difference in standardizing type of how the characters look and stopped them looking quite so gamey. The next thing was we made some tech changes as well. So the lighting model, there's many components that go into the lighting model, but we improved the subsurface scattering, which is what gives you the type of fleshy red look under your skin where the light is scattering in the epidermis. And we also added some cavity maps, which is a very detailed texture that shows how light reflects in between or doesn't reflect in between the pores of your skin. And that's crucial for when a light reflects off the skin, you can see the shape of the pores, and if you don't have that cavity map, you really don't get the sense of detail. And finally, another interesting thing we have that's different to some other engines and games is our wrinkle blending. So when the character pulls different facial expressions, we have multiple different textures we blend in to type of represent the changes in how the shape of your skin and also the color of the skin when you pull different expressions. Now that itself is a fairly standard technique that many games use. However, what we've done to try and maximize the detail is, because we want these textures to be as high resolution as possible, we couldn't afford to have them all be like 4,000 pixel wide textures for every single variation of facial pose you could pull. So instead, we split it out into 2 different textures. One that handles the micro pore details, the really fine details. And that one stays, on when you pull most facial expressions, they stay mostly the same. So we split them out and keep them at really high resolution. And then the type of the wrinkles, how you move and change your expressions, them textures are slightly lower resolution, but allows us to have quite a lot of different wrinkle shapes that we can achieve at the same time. So here's another example of the quality difference, which is quite massive. The top one being the new version of Mark Hamill, and the last one being really quite recent, to be honest, and the difference is pretty massive. See the color, although it's relatively subtle, in terms of color difference, that it just feels more solid, just like it's instantly recognizable. Quick video to show it in action.
Sir?
Who the hell are you? Ease up. You want me to learn your name?
So, cheers. So next up is the hair. So the hair in games is, as you've probably seen, is never the best part of the character. It normally always lets down the characters in games. So the current state of the industry is generally to make what we call hair cards, which is where you make a little flat polygon about 2 or 3 centimeters wide, and that represents, say, 100 or 1,000 hairs. And the artist has to meticulously place these hundreds of individual cards all over the head to try and give a representation of the hair. But it's quite an alien workflow. It's not really how hair is. But it's the industry standard. It's what everyone in the industry generally uses. It's a well-proven workflow. We use a great tool called XGen to generate these cards. And it works well, to be honest, in most situations, but the quality's not there, and it's really apparent in many games. It's not too expensive. Like, we've learned how to make hair that doesn't cost a fortune. It's not cheap either, but we've got by. So the disadvantages of it, when you get close up, that cost does start to increase. So it's because of the amount of layers of hair we have on top of each other, and each of them is semi-transparent. You end up shading, say, 20 or 30 layers of hair, and when you zoom up and you've got a cinematic, that really starts to add up. It's also really time-consuming to build the hair like this, and there's lots of quirks and limitations about the technique, so we have to spend a lot of artist time working around them. So here's an example of old Mark Hamill with the old hair. And you can type of see the light doesn't really reflect off it correctly, and you can type of see it's a bit chunky. So we recently made some improvements to the hair.
But the UEE Navy in 2855, and considered by many to be an engineering marvel of the time. Used to repair capital ships, Providence platform played an important role in keeping our brave starmen flying and helping the universe stay safe. Crusader Industries adopted Stanton II as its new home in 2865. Soon after, Providence Platform was converted into one of the most advanced shipyards ever in operation. Combining the benefits of low-gravity construction with the ease of atmospheric manufacturing, Crusader Industries can produce larger spacecraft faster and safer. Notice how our unique platforms allow the framework of the Hercules Starlifter to be reinforced without the strain of full gravity, using a bonding technique only possible in breathable atmosphere. And in preparation for the next generation of starships, Crusader engineers are already hard at work developing new innovative manufacturing techniques. When it comes to the future of spaceflight, at Providence Platform, the sky's the limit. But what about beyond the shipyards? Since its founding, Orison has continued to grow and change into much more than industrial platforms. Today, it's known as an unforgettable destination where employees and visitors alike can gather among the clouds to relax and unwind. At the heart of this new Orison is Cloudview Center, where luxurious gardens feature breathtaking vistas, renowned art installations, and first-class shops and entertainment. With all this, it's easy to see why millions of people consider Crusader a journey worth making. All made possible thanks to the most important part of Crusader Industries, our incredible family of workers. Enjoy your visit.
The wait is over. The biggest, baddest aerospace smackdown in the galaxy is back. That's right, we're back for another month-long celebration of all things with wheels, thrusters, huge guns, and so much more. And what better way to celebrate than a knockdown, drag-out, winner-take-all tournament of champions to see who the best of the best will be. It's all here at Ship Showdown. Will your favorite win? Your votes decide.
For example, some of these will type of fade out these cards at certain angles to make it hide the fact that these are cards and they're not really individual hairs. We also have some other shader tricks which we use, which is something we call pixel depth offset, which means when you get two cards intersecting, rather than them looking like two flat pieces of two flat polygons, we type of have this variation that gives them some that makes their intersection much more complex and more detailed, and it gives the appearance that they are actually hundreds or thousands of hairs rather than a flat plane. We also have the maps that help us vary the difference in color between the root and the tip, and also vary each individual hair strand within the card to try and pick them out, and again, try and hide this illusion that they are actually flat polygons. And finally, we've also started to use TSAA, which is the temporal anti-aliasing technique, and that combined with dithering can help reduce the cost and increase the quality of the hair. So what's next then? So while them new improvements are great, it's not quite enough, and we're hoping to get something better. So we started research a couple of months ago to try and find ways to improve the hair. So the research we're looking at is to try and model the hairs individually as individual splines, and then not turn them into these cards, just keep the original splines. So, and when it comes to the actual shading, all the renderer can actually deal with is polygons, so dynamically every frame, you turn the splines into a set of tiny little polygons, and then you render thousands of them. And I mean thousands, there's a lot of hairs here. Now, we can't have the real number of hairs on a human head. The hardware isn't quite there. As a high-end PC game developer, we're type of able to push this maybe further than most people would. So we're pushing it. We're trying to increase the hair count and see how far we can get with this technique, and see how much we can rely less on these cards than the traditional technique. So the advantage of this spline technique, so the quality is just enormously better. You can get much, much better results. I'll show you an example in a second, but it's just night and day. The workflow is also miles better. We get rid of this whole stage of having to figure out how to have flat cards and how to position them. And it's actually the tool I said we use, XGen, for generating the hairs. This is how it works. It generates strands, and the next stage is to turn it into these cards. So we just type of skip that step. We don't have to bother going and doing all that hard work. We can keep the original splines. It also has some other nice advantages where it plays better with some of our other engine effects, like depth of field and fog and glass. So here's the same Mark Hamill again with the newer hair. This is still research in progress, but you can see the way the light reflects and the individual hairs is much nicer, much softer, and there's less look like individual planes. There are still some problems, though. The number of polys you end up with in this approach, when you're modeling the individual hairs, it's quite crazy. So we have to do a lot of work to try and make that efficient. That's still ongoing. That's one of the most difficult parts of it, and the memory cost as well, of the number of splines. If you have many thousands of these, you end up with much more polys and much more data than you would have done otherwise with the card technique. We also need to aggressively LOD it. When we have like 3 or 4 lights in the scene as well, we'll have those to be too many polys for us to actually shadow it from the original hair mesh. So we have to make these type of shadow proxies, we call them, which is like a lower poly version of the hair. So that helps us be able to support many shadows at the same time, which is crucial to get the quality. And the final downside is we have to rely on this temporal anti-aliasing we have, TSAA, because without that, we really can't. That's a fundamental part of the algorithm that helps us deal with the high cost of all these intersecting splines, and the TSAA helps soften that result. So we're forced to use that, and that has its own downsides, which are difficult to solve. But if I just show you the end results on a cinematic here.
Sir?
Who the hell are you?
Stay frosty. I'm your new wingman, sir. The name's...
Ease up. You want me to learn your name? Do what I say and live long enough for me to care.
So, hope you like it. That's, like I say, it's still research in progress, but we're quite confident we're going to get some really good results from this. And that's my part over. I'll hand you over to the amazing Sean.
Hey, everyone. For those that don't know me, not yet. I know, that was so nice of them, right? Anyways, for those that don't know me, my name's Sean Tracy. I'm the technical director of content here at Cloud Imperium Games. It's basically like a tech art, tech animation, and tools director. Generally on the tech art side, I just want to explain a little bit what a tech artist is. There's a lot of different flavors of tech art, but generally we exist somewhere between Josh and Ali. So Ali is an engineer, Josh is an artist. So technically, we aren't artists, tech artists. It's perfect, right? So basically, we exist in the spot that goes between the two of them. So generally, we're developing tools and we're developing pipelines so that the artist can get all these kind of things in. We try to set those 50 to whatever budgets for the art team, right? Cool. All right. So, as I mentioned, tech art rigs, skins, and simulates basically a delivered asset. And generally, what we have to do is bring these characters to life. We need to move them around. We need to skin them up to rigs. We need to put simulation on them. And generally, we need to get them in the game in front of you guys so you can experience all of the cool things that you are seeing up there. So the first thing to kind of talk about in terms of our pipeline is we got to talk about skeletons. Now, what's a skeleton? Now, it's actually just a set of joints. And just to give you an idea, our standard male skeletons has about 170 joints. It's a lot to deal with. But the first part of that process is, hey, is this character male? Is this character female? Is it Van Duel? Is it John? Is it Banu? Is it a creature? Is it a ship? Is it a plant? Is it a cup with ice in it? Those are all the kind of things we have to come up with. So first, we select the skeleton. Now, as I mentioned, some of the skeletons we have, male, female, Van Duel, and there's going to be lots more coming. So we have a whole pipeline behind the scenes that deals with skeleton updates. We have somewhere between, I think it's about 60,000 animations right now. So if you make a single skeleton update, an animation really is just a bunch of transforms or a bunch of rotations. that are all keyframed. But as soon as you change those joints, you'd have to batch process that entire 60,000 kind of animations. So we work on some nice update pipelines that make that not having to be the case. Now, after that, we get to skinning. So what is skinning? A lot of people, when they hear skinning, they're like, oh, that's the texture. That's the material. To us, that's not at all the case. Skinning is actually weighting certain vertices of the characters to the bones so that they move at a certain rate. So when I move my arm, we've got this vert skinned into my upper arm, so as that moves the vertice. So it sounds like a pretty easy process, but actually when you get some really complex pieces of armor, some really complex characters, this is actually pretty tricky to do and pretty tricky to make look real. So this is a big part of a tech artist's job. So then once the skinning and rigging is done, we'd move on to simulation. But first, I want to show you a little bit of the actual process that we go through for skinning. So here we've got a piece of armor. This is actually one that I showed in a cloth talk a little bit earlier. It's one of the Hurston Security with some brand new cloth text that we're using. And you can see that the poly counts are whatever, right? So they're pretty high, and it means we have to deal with every single one of these vertices. This is why a tech artist actually really cares about that budget, because every single vert they add is a vert that we have to skin, right? And you can see that it gets pretty damn granular. Now, we can start off pretty basically where we actually project from our naked male, from our base male, onto the armor, but then it's gonna just look like a wetsuit or something that's literally attached to the skin. And this is where the trickery comes in. We've got to blend weights. All the different colors are basically different weights, different bones that are on that particular one, how many weights there are on it, which bone it's attached to. And then we can have really hard things that are like along the spine. If we're moving our shoulders back or we're moving our arms up, that's just another level of complexity that we have to deal with. So what they do is they touch up the skin from the projection, and then we have to run a ROM on it. What's a ROM? It's a range of motion. So we have an animation that we can just load up really quickly, and we can run them through all their paces, you know, literally a running pace or walking, or we even have one that actually goes through a huge range of motion. Basically everything that a game character could do, and we even go a little bit further with some of this stuff because of course we have things like VoIP and runtime ringing, so you can sometimes do things that we're not necessarily expecting. So they polish those up, we do the ROM, and then we move on to simulation. All right, so dynamic simulations. What's a dynamic simulation? Dynamic simulations are things like bubbly bits that are all over the characters. Generally, these kind of bits make characters look a lot more next-gen. It gives tons of secondary motion to animations. So my shirt shouldn't just stay rigidly attached to me like a wetsuit. As I move around, that should be loose and move separately to me. The problem with that is that though we can simulate all kinds of attachments, you would usually have to make bespoke animations for those attachments. So instead, we use the physics system to kind of make up for this. So we can simulate all different kinds of attachments. You guys are seeing it all over the game already. You've got weapons, you've got grenades. I don't think we have earrings in yet, but we'll have earrings at some point here. Maybe not for players, maybe for... so we got earrings, we got hair, we got all kinds of stuff. Josh kind of gave me a... That's okay. All right, and these require joints. And like I was talking about before, we've got 170 joints in the base skeleton. But if you need joints for these simulations, what the heck are you gonna do? Because now we have a bunch of different outfits that we have to put on, but you'd have to what, then carry all the joints around on the base skeleton? So every single possible combination of every single possible attachment with every single possible simulation on your base skeleton, we can't do that. Now that was kind of an old school way of doing things, and I've worked on games that was the case. You have to carry those joints around. Luckily, we have a cool system called skeleton extensions. So basically, this is a set of joints that I can attach. A great example is like a magazine, or even like the trench coat is a great example. The trench coat has a whole bunch of joints, and I think it's another 100 or so joints just to do the sort of cloth simulation to it. Again, we can't carry that on the base skeleton, but with skeleton extensions, we attach it, and then we extend the skeleton at runtime. And then when you remove it, we clean those joints right back up. Now, provided they're all physically simulated, this is actually pretty straightforward to do. I say that as being not the programmer that wrote it, so. This is preferable to skinning as no specific animation.
was my fate and caused me pain. Feels like yesterday. You made your first mistake, wasn't your last mistake. All the things you say, lies that infiltrated my bed and I believed them. Nothing left. But the heart it rules, it rules the head. You've been gone for so long, my heart breaks, but I can't get enough. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet. In a world of make-believe, denying everything we don't wanna see. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet. Now the storm's past, I can see clearly, even though you don't hear me. You haunt me in my dreams, but I'm waking up. I found a way to breathe. You've been gone for so long, my heart breaks, but I can't get enough. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet. In a world of make-believe, denying everything we don't wanna see. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet. 'Cause the taste of you is bittersweet.
Go in and animate this thing. That just works. The animator might have done this run cycle 2 years ago. That's fine. If I put the cool jacket on him, it's going to move exactly like you expect, no animator input whatsoever. So I refer to this a lot of times as runtime rigging. So let's take a quick look at that. I might have to loop this video once or twice. So this was actually Silas's outfit in one of our commercials before. And actually, not to get you to look, but at the bottom of the jacket, you can see that actually it simulates quite more realistically on the right-hand side. Now, I'll loop that video back again just so you guys can see that a little bit more. So again, if we had to simulate, if we had to animate this specifically, that would be a bit of a problem. But and it's subtle stuff, I realize, but that matters to us, and it absolutely matters to Chris. So you can see the jacket on the left is almost attached to him, right? This is like a wetsuit. This is full skinning, no simulation joints. And then the one on the right has some nice, just some simple bone chains, nothing too crazy, just to give it that flow that you would expect out of clothing. So we'll be taking this to the next level. And if you saw the cloth talk a little bit earlier, you'll see kind of where we're taking this kind of stuff. All right. So moving on from that, I want to show a little bit of a kind of a highlight reel on how these guys go about actually marking up this runtime rigging. So we've got two different tools that we use. Generally, we use Maya within as a DCC and setting up the joints themselves. But then we also have a bunch of in-engine tools. One specifically called Character Tool that the tech artists use day in and day out setting up these simulations. And I'll call out some of the ones that we actually use. There's a lot of different types. So here, for example, is Battiglia's leg, or basically the cybernetic leg that we showed in, I think, an ATV just really recently. So this uses a ton of runtime rigging. You can imagine that we wouldn't want to rebuild a whole skeleton just for this. So there's a lot of aim constraints within this one. And what that gives us is a lot of hydraulic sort of feels. And this is all happening at runtime. So there's no specific animation made for that one. Same sort of thing. This is the heavy slaver arm. There's a big piston that twists. So that actually needs an aim constraint as well as a twist constraint. Then we've got ties. So, and I realize this stuff is subtle, but if it's not there, it just doesn't look right. So this one is a pendulum chain of, I think, about 10 to Yeah, probably about 10 joints, maybe a few less. And you can see there's little physics on them. These are, we call them lozenges. They'll actually impact each other, or they can collide with the environment. And again, that gives that secondary motion. We can't go back to an animator and say, we made a tie. You have to do 60,000 animations again. Steve Bender not be pleased at all. So here we kind of hidden this asset a tiny bit just because it's a bit of a squadron asset. We don't want to give too much away. But we have to do the ponytails. Same sort of idea. It's a pendulum simulation. And here they're inside of Character Tool, just actually turning them on and turning some of the debugs on with them. And usually when we set up these pendulum simulations, what we deal with is weight, range of motion, so how much on a pendulum this can actually move. If we do it on a weapon, we use a half cone kind of technique, so it can be flat against the back. But you can see, even for stuff as subtle as a ponytail, this can get pretty busy. So this is a bit of a grayscale. Again, we just don't want to give anything away here. And again, this is in slow motion, so keep in mind. So here is, I believe this is the heavy slaver as well. And this we kind of have, I got no better word for it, kind of a skirt, sort of loincloth kind of thing. It's really, it's heavy. But you see there's a lot of simulation joints to pull this one off. We're going to turn on the debugs to all of them, and you'll get kind of an idea that even something as subtle as that, back and front, it's some work to get this polished and working quite right. So huge amount of respect for our tech artists there. Now I realize this is a bit weird, just the legs walking around, but again, you see the simulation working quite nicely. Cool, I think that one kind of does it there. Cool. Okay, so now that we've done the skinning, we've got the skeleton, we've skinned it, we've simulated it, we have to get it into game, do something with it. Now, we've kind of talked about this a little bit, but our characters are made of items just the exact same way that the ships are. So we actually use the exact same system of item ports. So characters are just a set of items. The body is an item, a shirt is an item, the head is an item, even the eyes and the teeth are items. All these items have unique components on them, and this is kind of, the whole reason for this is that we need things like additive components, and these are gameplay components. These are sets of code that aren't just restricted to a character entity, it's literally just the item carrying it. So a good example of this is like armor rating. So I might have an armor rating of 5 on my torso and 2 on my legs. When I put the legs on, I have 2. Once I put the torso on, I have 7. So those add up kind of together. And there's a lot of different components on it. We also carry some sort of hiding and showing logic, which I'll talk about a little later. We call it zone culling. Now, these are all attached within a certain hierarchy on item ports, and I'll talk about that in a second. So one of the things that happened was as Star Citizen was starting, we had a lot of assets, and generally if you're going to make a sort of modular character system where people are going to wear multiple layers of clothing and interchange them between each other, there's a really important thing that you need to do, and that's to follow the exact same topology from your body all the way up, and that means literally the same polygons all the way across, regardless of what kind of outfit it is. This wasn't the case. When most of us came on, we had a lot of assets already, so basically that decision was already made. The reason this is a problem is during deformation. So if you can imagine I have a long jacket on and I bend my arm rather. If the body topology, so the actual polygons of it, is different than my jacket topology, I'm gonna get clipping every time. I'm gonna have the elbow come through, and there's no amount of skinning that you can do to fix that because they're just literally too different. So I might have 2 edges here to deal with and then 3 edges on the elbow. So that third edge is always gonna go through because I have no other control. So how we solved that was by just not having the problem. We said, let's just call that stuff out. So we call out the polygons on lower layers. But now we have the problem of layering. So as we go up, we have 3 to 4 different layers that can be on top. Sometimes you want to show a shirt. Sometimes you want to show a jacket that still shows the naked body. Sometimes there's a lot of built-in logic to this, and that's actually housed on the components. So I want to kind of show you how this kind of works. So here we have a very fit male. And as the shirt's attached, basically we just chop the asset in half just to show you what's happening below. We actually call out the entire chest, and then we call out the upper arm. And you saw on the previous slide, we have, I think it's 32 zones. I might get that wrong. But it's between 30 and 40 zones right now that we can call out, and that's all marked up within it. So again, the upper arm is gone, the lower, the bicep sort of area, and the entire torso. So we do that for t-shirts, long sleeves. So on a long sleeve, all of a sudden we hide a couple more zones. And again, we just don't deal with this dissimilar topology problem. Also, we get a little bit of performance back too, which is good. So there's another sweater here. And full t-shirt back on. And now a jacket layer, which makes this a little more complicated. So now that we've got the jacket on top of a t-shirt, we actually have to add those layers and that logic together. So the t-shirt is hiding all the chest and upper arm, but it would have left the lower arm. Now that we have a jacket on the higher layer, then we continue to hide the lower arms. And I realize it sounds subtle, but there's a lot of internal logic that actually has to happen within there. Just, again, some rules that are set up within the items. So it's really hard, but at some point we had to make a call on whether we were going to let you guys kind of go with the Fabio jacket kind of thing, where we have a jacket with no shirt underneath. Chris said yes. Okay, it's cool. All right. Then he's right back to it. So that gives you an idea of what we're doing with zone culling anyways. So I talked about the items. Ultimately, all of these items come together in a file we call the loadout. So this is a loadout is literally just a snapshot of a hierarchy of items, and they all depend on each other. So you can't attach a head without a body. You can't attach eyes without a head. You can't attach glasses without eyes. You can't attach hair without a head, without a body. You can't put an undersuit on without some clothing on the body. Like, it's all hierarchical in that sense. And the loadout literally is just a snapshot of that. You players, when you're playing and you're working with your mobi-glass, setting your loadout, you don't really see the hierarchy, but you are actually just adjusting your own hierarchy of a character. Now, we have to set up hierarchies for NPC characters, so we have a little tool. It's a little less flashy than a mobi-glass, but we have our own internal developer tool called the loadout editor that the designers and the artists can actually put all this stuff together. So I want to show you kind of some of that in action and how we do that. So I'll kind of go a little slow on this one. We've got, first, he's actually added the body item on. And I realize the UI is dark. He likes the dark UI. Power to him. Thanks a lot, Brett, for making the video. Now, he's attached the body, and on the body, we have a whole bunch of ports. We got the armor undersuit port. We got clothing feet, clothing hands, clothing legs, torso 1, torso 2, and the head. So next step, we're going to add the head. So great, but the head has no eyes. So maybe we got to add some eyes. Then we add some teeth. Then we add some hair. Then we go to clothing torso layer 0, and we add sort of an undershirt. So our torso layer 0 is kind of stuff that touches your skin, and then torso 1 is above it. So we put some shoes on. Now, we talked about the zone culling system, and what's kind of interesting is that we call the body as we attach clothing, but we kind of have the exact same relationship when it comes to armor and undersuit. So if you can consider that a naked body is to clothing the same way an undersuit is to armor. So that's the exact same sort of structure. It's just all additive to the other hierarchy. So you'll see that as soon as we attach the undersuit, oh, that already happened anyways. As soon as we attach the undersuit, we have to hide all that clothing. So that's all already called out, and that's on the highest layer. But now we have to attach some torso items, attach a helmet, and we're still doing that same kind of culling all the way down onto the undersuit. And then we can even add some weapons. I think we attached a paw there, some grenades, give some magazines onto them. And then in the end, all we do is we save that loadout, we load that as an XML directly on an animated object. for the developers anyways, we load the loadouts pretty directly on the players if we have to, and these kind of things. So it's quite nice. Cool. So that kind of gave you a really good idea of, like, literally start to finish. We go from concept all the way down to loadout implementation. And as you can see, there's a lot that goes into this, and especially the stuff that Ali was talking about. There's so much subtlety in a lot of things that we're doing. Like, we were really happy with those faces. Maybe, you know, again, I was actually really happy with the Gary Oldman stuff 4 years ago. But as time has progressed, as new things have come online, we can push it further and further and further. And again, there's a lot of subtleties. Now I want to talk about some future things that we're going to start looking into, which is pretty exciting. So creatures, that's a big one. You know, we kind of played around with a sandworm. Cool. We played around with a zyphopod. Cool. But now we have Hurston. We have savanna biomes. We need to get some life into them. So that'll be a really fun thing to work on. Really stick around for the next talk because there'll be a little bit on this in there, some body variations. So that'll be interesting too. We can't all be buff and perfect like that guy is. So we've also got more aliens to deal with. And by aliens, I mean whole alien races. So we have the Banu and the Jan. That's going to be super interesting. We've got procedural character stuff. So I talked a little bit about these loadout hierarchies, and actually really nice to work in those kind of hierarchies is you can make that procedural, I don't want to say easy, I keep saying easy. You can do it in kind of a straightforward manner because it's a whole set of rules already that's built into the system. You just ask it to do certain things. Then again, stick around for the next talk as gene splicing will be a thing very, very soon here. And then finally, as you've started to see, that we've started to implement these cybernetic limbs. So it's only a matter of time until we get the Death of a Spaceman stuff moving along, and we get that to you guys as players. So hopefully you guys found this talk pretty interesting. We want to have some big special thanks. We had a lot of help making this talk, and we get a lot of help day to day between all the different departments. Characters take a lot of people to put together at this level of quality. So huge special thanks to Andrew Hernando, Brett Morris, Shane Hessler, Chris Von Camperno, Corey Johnson, Erica, I don't want to mess it up. Erica, thank you, Forrest Steffen, Gage Hallman, Gunn Park, Jeremiah Lee, Marcy Lee, Milan Paycheck, Tyler Young, and of course the rest of CIG, and mostly you guys. Really, I'm always so happy. People come up and say thank you to me, and it's us that should be thanking you because you guys are letting us do this work. This is our passions. I could be doing other jobs. I could be working on Barbie's Funhouse Adventure or something, but you guys let me work on this stuff. So thank you, guys. Thank you.
I'm still here, still trying to learn what all the buttons do. So while I'm at it, let's not waste any more of your time and get you all right into part 2 of this enormous Arena Commander update that's scheduled to make its way to you in the upcoming Alpha 320, and I'll be right here when you get back.
Do your best Jared impersonation.
Oh, I don't want
Last time on Inside Star Citizen.
Just yell really loud. Last time on Inside Star Citizen. I don't even know what accent that was.
Are you excited to be doing 2 ISCs in a row?
It took me over 80 minutes in what we had only scheduled to be an hour to film what was probably a 15-minute episode. I'm sorry. Especially to Jared's team. Sorry, guys. It's awesome to be getting such attention shone on Arena Commander, and I'm excited to finally bring it up to what I believe it has potential to be. I get pinged like every other week asking to put atmosphere in Arena Commander, and now they finally have it, they can stop whining. They're going to whine about something else. I can't stop the whining, but I hope you liked it. So last ISC, we talked a lot about flight, but there's 2 other major parts that we want to be talking about here. And the first is FPS combat. So FPS combat in Arena Commander is so important because you need a place to practice shooting each other without actually dying for real, like you do in the Persistent Universe. So we need to make that experience as close to the Persistent Universe while still having it be fun and unique. So you access Star Marine game modes exactly the same as we showed last week with the new front end, new lobby system, and jump straight into the action. So with our existing maps, the VFX team are helping us out and doing a pass over everything. So it might not be finalized in the footage that you're seeing here, but we're excited to see where they can take it and uplift all of our levels because they're in need of a facelift. And we've been working hard on fixing a lot of the bugs and frustrations across the maps.
All I know is they did a lot of bug fixes recently. I don't know, we're not meant to just say bug fixes. Fixing doors that weren't meant to be there, resolving the fact that you could just smash through the glass which you're not meant to be able to smash through, and just go into EVA in the middle of elimination, which is bad. Being able to get into areas you shouldn't be able to get into.
So we fixed those up. In terms of new maps, we've got a variation on a fan favourite, Echo 11. We're introducing that to elimination. Echo 11 is quite a big map for control. For elimination, we've tightened it up. We've cut off access to the D room and some of A room and made it a little bit smaller so that the action can be more compact and suitable for elimination. So last week we showed off Security Post Korea being introduced to dogfighting maps, but we've also introduced it to FPS maps, so you'll be able to play elimination, control, and some of the new game mods on Korea itself. So to recap, for Star Marine, you'll be able to play on the Good Doctor, a larger version of Echo 11 for control, small one for elimination, and the same for Damien and Damien Comms, as well as Security Post Korea, which is being introduced to elimination and control. So with the Good Doctor, at some point along the line, all the trees disappeared. So Design have went in and restored that, so it's back in this beautiful oasis area that it's meant to be in, and fixed the lighting and various other issues that just happened over time. I don't know how. And now Good Doctor's looking beautiful again. So Star Marine is a personal favourite of mine. I love FPS combat, and I'm so excited to be working on more additions to the FPS area of Arena Commander. And that leads us to something I'm super excited to talk about, and that's experimental modes.
Experimental modes are important because it allows us to get back into what the real meaning of Arena Commander used to be, which is playtesting and making sure that things that are made for the PU and Arena Commander and Squadron work the way they're meant to. It allows us to put stuff into a testing environment where we can quickly check if just something works the way we want it to, essentially.
Somewhere along the line, we lost that, and when we formed the Arena Commander feature team, we knew that Arena Commander has to stand on its own and have these flagship game modes and new things that are unique to Arena Commander, but we still want to support the persistent universe and other ventures that we go on. Experimental modes are important to us because it gets things in your hands quicker. Instead of waiting for these big, huge game modes to release, we can test things out periodically for a day, a week, a month, and get it into your hands sooner rather than later. So let's dive in and take a look at some of the experimental modes that we have been working on. The first experimental mode is single weapon elimination, so you can jump in with what will be pistols at first.
From a developer's standpoint, single weapon elimination gives us the opportunity to really test weapons that we want to get tested. It allows us to check every single part of the weapon balancing and make sure that it works just right. We know that players want to test their skill against each other, and the best way to do that is to make sure everyone's equal. So everyone gets the same weapons, everyone gets the weakest weapons in our first version, and they get to just see who's better than the other.
With 320, we're introducing pistol-only elimination, and that will be the arc-light pistol, and it's a personal favourite of mine. It adds increased time to kill, and it came originally from playing with you guys, the community. And at the end of a long session of Star Marine, someone threw out the idea of, like, what, can we do like a pistol-only round? And I just had so much fun with that. We ended up playing for at least another hour. So that mode is inspired by that. So for this patch, it's just pistols only, but we can change that up at any point. It's simple parameters. And if the weapons team come to us with a new weapon they want to test out, they want to get that analytic data, they want to get the fun factor, we can put it into Arena Commander, whatever that weapon is only, and see how you guys like it.
The next experimental mode that we're working on is Gun Rush.
Now, names are temporary. They might change between now and release. But Gun Rush is where you start off with a pistol, and as you get a kill, it upgrades you.
And then with every kill, you go to the next type of gun. You go through LMGs, SMGs,
some special weapons I won't spoil,
snipers, and even the rail.
And then we've put some surprises in there for whoever gets to the last round. So Gun Rush, as the name might suggest, is super fast-paced. It lets you get your hands on many different weapons as you cycle through them and get some experience with stuff that you hadn't had. For example, I had no idea how to use shotguns. Still don't really, but I'm a little bit better at them now thanks to Gun Rush. So Gun Rush is only possible thanks to the refactors we've been doing to the spawning and loadout modules. So we can, instead of refreshing your entire loadout, switch out just the gun, and it's super fast now, whereas before it was a bit of a clunky thing to do.
In the next experimental mode, we're bringing ground vehicles to Arena Commander, and that is Tonk Royale.
So there's going to be 3 locations for Tonk Royale. It's going to be Hurston, Yela, and Magda. So how it works is simply we have a massive arena, we drop you in on these 3 various maps, and you just go to town. There's going to be 3 versions of Tonk Royale. First is a classic elimination deathmatch, respawns, just get as high score as you can. Second is squadron battle, so you are team versus team tanks. In squadron battle, it's super exciting because you can run as just the driver, or you can join one of your teammates and be their gunner. And then the third is still being worked on. Not sure if it's going to be making this release, but super excited about it, is hardcore elimination. So essentially elimination, but you've only got the single life. When a Turbo Storm gets introduced to the verse, we'll be sure to add that to Tonk Royale as well. After 320, we'll also be finishing off our racing refactor, which allow us to make maps faster and merges PU and AC racing systems together. It's going to be a more streamlined process for us, our designers, and a better experience for you, less buggy on both ends. So with the racing refactor, we've also been working on a betting module, which will let you bet on races. Now, we haven't got all of that signed off, but excited to get that in if we can.
CitizenCon 2953.
In conjunction with Bering, we are currently crafting the most devastating Size 7 mountable ship cannon ever devised. The SF-7, being prototyped in both ballistic and laser configurations, is specifically designed to incapacitate capital-class vessels. Of course, with a weapon so refined, The task at hand is to try and design an equally sophisticated ship to wield.
Universe. All of these maps, game modes, and features need to have their own individual go no-goes. And at the time of recording this, we've got some successful goes for Alpha 320 for the following: the new Arena Commander front end, the new lobby system, the new spawning system which allows for multi-crew gameplay, new def cameras and def recaps, a revamped scoreboard and scoring system, 4 new racetracks for the new Horizon Speedway, Old Vanderval, Rickard Memorial, Defford Link, and Halloran Circuit, in addition to the 4 PU racetracks, the Snake Pit, Miner's Lament, Yadar Valley, and Icebreaker, the Jericho Station dogfighting map, Security Post Curator with dogfighting and FPS maps, the new Pirate Swarm Final Wave Capital Battle, the new Echo 11 elimination map, and new experimental game modes like Single Weapon Elimination, Gun Rush, Tonk Royale, Elimination and Squadron Battle versions, and finally a new Infinite Wave Vandal Swarm you'll discover for yourself. So that about does it this week. I'm so excited to share all these cool developments with Arena Commander, and got the list here. I just want to give a shout out back to Adam, Adrian, Bryn, Corwin, Kirk, Mark, Ricky, Samuel, and Sean and Simon and the Arena Commander feature team. I'm sitting here in front of the camera, but man, the work it's thanks to this amazing team that I have. And I just couldn't say no to Jared because he's my dungeon master and I really don't want him to kill my character.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that changes to FPS maps should make for a more varied experience in Star Marine game modes, that the first ground vehicles are finally arriving with Tonk Royale, and that we hope the new experimental modes will function not unlike dynamic events for the Precision Universe, where they can provide timed, direct experiences the team can use for analytics and feedback from things as small as a single pistol, to a brand new vehicle, to even curious experiences like Gun Rush, and a few more things that we're not quite ready to share just yet. Also, if you missed last week's show, go check that out and see everything else that's coming your way from the new Arena Commander feature team in the upcoming Alpha 320. There's some fun stuff in there. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for exploring the process of game development with us, and we'll see you all here next week.
There isn't going to be a post-credits thing in every show.
Never sat in this one before. As Alpha 323 continues its journey towards becoming Star Citizen's biggest life in the verse as we know it patch yet, we know lots of folks have patiently waited to see one thing above all others: the Misk Raptor. What? The Mobiglass and Star map app. The Mobiglass and newly christened map app.
Arrival complete. Welcome.
So the Mobiglass is getting a massive visual overhaul for 323.
The version everyone's been living with for years is it kind of does the job, but you can see it's dated now.
So the entire Mobiglass is overhauled from what it was before. It's using a new technology that we've built called cards, and we use cards for other UIs throughout the game. For the Mobiglass, it was a big task to convert because it has a lot of apps in it as well. So we need to convert all of those apps over to the new tech in order for the entire thing to be able to release.
So in 3.23, we've got a really big improvement to the user experience. So everything's designed to look nicer and feel nicer.
Ready to upgrade?
And sadly, we haven't really had all the time we needed to get all the apps there. So you are going to recognize the VMA and the Comms app just as they have always been. But with that package, you're getting all the other apps with a visual update and also functionality updates for some of them.
You've got a completely updated home screen, so you can do things like view your ship, you can see your health, notifications, kind of the information you really need to see now.
So we're also getting a fully new health app where you can see all the things that's currently affecting your health and all the stats that you would normally see on your HUD.
Over time, we've added all these cool new things that can affect the player. So we're going to have things like radiation. We've got existing stuff like you can break bones. If you heal yourself, you can potentially overdose. You can have drug effects. All this cool stuff is happening, but it wasn't obvious to the player just walking around what was going on under the hood. So we added this new app where you can track all that stuff.
So the health app is going to be the place to go when, for some reason, you're feeling ill and you just need that extra little bit of information of what do I need to do to take care of myself to get out of this situation. So the contract manager has been in the game for a long time, and it's just grown kind of obvious that it's not doing all the things you need it to.
All the functionality is essentially the same internally, but it needed a visual polish, and also the user experience needed bringing up to date. So some new features like you can toggle between illegal missions, you can see what the rewards are going to be ahead of time.
So no more randomly getting attacked by the police, hopefully. It's probably your fault anyway.
Some big improvements coming to the Mobiglass. That's coming in 3.23, but one thing we didn't talk about yet was the star map. We've had the original Star Map in Star Citizen for a long time, so it was overdue for an update.
Don't get me wrong, like the old Skylink app, it did what it should, but I think it has grown a bit obsolete.
No, death to the old star map!
That's harsh.
The original one just showed the stars and planets and so on, but we wanted to expand on that.
So opening up the star map for the first time in 3.23, you're gonna realize that the star map is not just the star map anymore. It's the everything map.
It's now called Maps app rather than Star Map.
And why did we change it?
Because we now have the interior map, so this shows like your local area, as well as sort of zooming out and showing the star map.
So what is the interior map? It's a bird's eye view of the current environment.
It's a really cool 3D map. So instead of just having a top-down view, this is showing you the actual level.
And it's presented as a fully schematic 3D view in which you can find every relevant point of interest, such as a shop, transit station, hospital, and the like.
You can get them for ships, for landing zones in 3.23. In future, we'll expand on that and add it to more areas.
And if you're not familiar with the location you just arrived to, or you're a new player and you're not familiar with any of them, actually having the spatial awareness of where the things that are relevant to you are is going to provide a giant step up in terms of the experience of the game in general.
As it's fully 3D, you can move around, navigate between floors, zoom in and out, and so on, as you'd expect.
You will see the local area where you're walking around, something you've never been able to do before. Essentially, you'll be able to navigate between all the different rooms and different important areas of the game.
It also offers a way to overlay your own data onto it that is specific to you. So, for example, the location of your mission objective. Custom markers.
You can also use it to plot a route to another location on the map. Drop a marker and navigate to it, so we'll see a line on the map that shows you where you can actually go and where the easiest way to get there.
So on that map, you'll be able to just click any room you want to go to. You can go between the different zones of the area, and you can place a little marker and route all the way there.
So navigating is one of the primary use cases we want to make as robust as we can for 323. And so part of that involves providing a variety of fallback cases in order to help you best understand how to get somewhere. So for instance, if we ask the AI system and it can't return you a path via its nav links and nav meshes, we can ask the transit system. And if the transit system says there's a connection between the two zones, then that would help you route.
So at the time of recording, we're having issues loading all the different OCs that's in a big landing zone, for example. So we're looking into these solutions to make sure that you can track from one part to a fully different part of the area.
So Star Map. Star Map is vastly improved. The main thing we wanted to change was make it a nice user experience. So everything in there has been overhauled.
When you open your map, you'll first of all be confronted with your local area, so you'll see what room you're in and what's close to you. But you can also zoom out and you will see the universe open up in front of you as you zoom out.
From here, we can see the entire verse. We can see all the planets,
Space stations, Lagrange points, all of that good stuff. You can then click on any of those markers and you will be automatically panned and zoomed into them so you can see a little bit more detail about them. If you've zoomed in on a planet, for example, you can zoom in a little bit more and you can start to see the surface locations. So you can see towns, outposts.
you get all the information you need about them. We're adding this new system where you can see all the amenities that are available at that location.
So for outposts, landing zones, and stations, there will be a section here for amenities, which will
task.
It all started with a dream. The need to challenge the conventions of our time. To look at the well-worn path ahead and decide to take another route. What is life if not the culmination of all decisions we've made and the roads we've traveled? We decide to seek out the unknown. Or take a stand against the unjust in the universe. We are all chasing who we are, who we want to be. Which begs the question, why choose it all? Introducing the all-new Alpha, Beta, Delta, Gamma. 2948 Mustang. Dream redefined for the modern era.
They say that some things just don't go out of style. That the true classics never die. Touring, exploration, combat, and now introducing long-haul freight. The all-new Roberts Space Industries Constellation Taurus still does it all.
whether there's a food court, whether there's a hospital or a clinic. All of these sorts of things you'll be able to see on those box outs, so you'll know which is the most appropriate location to go to. We showed in CitizenCon, obviously, that these display much better now, so you'll see them rotate with the map, and if they've gone behind the planet, they fade out, and if they're in front of your view, they're brighter, so you can see them more easily. So at the moment, if you zoom in, it will eventually get too big and you'll go through, but I am currently working on it so that it will zoom in to the surface and you'll never actually sort of clip through the planet.
And generally, we've tried to make it feel like a much more pleasant user experience, so there's things like items don't disappear off the back of the map anymore, everything's easy to read.
So as always, the star map is what you're going to want to use to route your way through the verse.
You can still set routes as you could in the previous version, but there is a little bit more feedback if there is a problem and you can't set a route, whether you don't have enough fuel or whether it's obstructed.
It's going to be so easy, it's going to be so intuitive for you you click the thing, and there you get the button to say set route. It doesn't always just have the ability to set a route, because you can't always set a route. We will let you know when you can set a route.
There are a few things that are new for this new star map that have not been seen in the old star map. The primary one there would be search. So we now have a list of all locations. So there'll be a little drop down in your top left corner. If you open that up, you can see the full list of locations ordered by what is closest to you. And then you can also type any location and it will appear. So you could type, for example, L1 and all of the Lagrange point ones would appear. So this allows you a lot more flexibility to finding what you're looking for when it's not as sort of, immediately right there when you're at the current view. So you can go all the way across the solar system to look at something completely different.
Star Citizen is a massive systemic game. We've got all this cool stuff going on. We've got multiple players doing things at different times. So we wanted to improve the overall interface from the player to that game world. So a big part of that is the new Mobiglass.
Finally, we've gone to this effort to refactor and do the whole Mobiglass hub from scratch. New maps, new applications, everything is using new tech, and we have a much more flexible and robust system for the Mobiglass under the hood.
When you're playing Star Citizen, it should be a smooth experience. You shouldn't be stuck trying to find whatever it is you need to find at the moment. We're helping you do that with the new apps, making it easier for you to find your missions or to even just find a place in the verse.
Now that we have that framework in place, then it's kind of the sky's the limit in terms of what we can do with it and how many apps we can develop for it. And it's all using new tech, it's clean, it's the way we want it.
The other big new feature is obviously the star map with the brand new interior map as well.
Star Citizen is a game about exploring. It is a game about spacefaring. And even so, even when you're not going around in space, it's still about exploring.
Without the star map, it's really difficult to do that, right? This makes it so much easier to navigate around, to finding what you want and where it is, and how to get there.
Overall, it helps the player interact with the world, get to where they want to, do what they want to do more easily and quickly.
Offer.
Definitely.
Oh. Yeah, I agree.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that Mobiglass is finally converted over to building blocks in the new card system, meaning that Flash, as we know it, has pretty much gone to live on a farm upstate. That the conversion sets the stage for the creation of multiple new apps going forward, and that the new internal map and star map have combined to become simply the Map app. Now, of course, remember that all things you see on ISC are a work in progress, and as any player of Evocati or developer alike may tell you, will continue to iterate between when you see it here and its upcoming release in Alpha 3.23. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the process of game development with you, and we'll see y'all here next week.
Hi, I'm not in this episode, but they told me to show you this.
So I think it's really important for the alien races to have representation.
It adds extra depth to the gameplay and to visuals.
There are all these weird and wonderful races, and they each want to have their own style and influence.
You know, obviously with human stuff, a lot of it is quite familiar, whereas the alien races, that really is an opportunity for us to sort of push the boundaries of the Star Citizen visuals.
I really like how the Tavarin race and their ships look. It is very different to the other ships in game. And at the moment the Tavarin only really have the Prowler, and that's a dropship, so it's not suited for a wide range of players. So we created the Talon to be a fighter counterpart to it. So the Talon is already well into production, it is already flyable in engine, and it's great to get a concept straight into engine without a sort of a pause in between.
So we worked really hard on the visuals and the materials of this ship. You can see that it's very different to anything that we've done in the past. The silhouette, that's a really striking silhouette hanging in the sky. And, you know, to form that sort of silhouette with this ship, you know, we've built the wings, we've got the strong shoulders, and those wings, you know, when they're in full spread, you can see the feathers, and we've got this iridescent paint, sort of a dielectric. It's very much reminiscent of birds like starlings, and that sort of runs through the ship.
The Talon is built to be a fighter that has some stealth elements to it. So it excels at jumping in, striking hard, and then getting out of the fight using its agility to escape returning fire. And it falls into that trope of glass cannon. It is very agile, it has very low armor, and it has relatively big guns for its size. It comes with 2 gimbaled size 3 ballistic weapons as default. That means it has a size 4 hardpoint there. So you have the choice of going with the default loadout of size 3 gimbaled, or you can really maximize the damage and change to size 4 weapons. It also comes equipped with a missile rack on each wing, so you do have some missiles, but it really isn't the focus of the ship. It's all about the guns. The other area of the Talon that provided us with a challenge internally is the whole ejection cockpit canopy setup, because a lot of our ships, you get in, you get on the seat, and the seat ejects. This is the whole entire dashboard and flight controls eject out with you, and that's something that we haven't done in ships before. We've had the ability to fire off parts, but not the entire cockpit.
When going from landing to takeoff, this ship is going to transform before your eyes, and it's going to go from hawkish position into a bird of prey of in flight. So the wings will be expanding, the feathers will be revealed, and in terms of when you're flying around, you're going to have the sun glinting off that iridescent paint. I mean, it's just going to look amazing.
While the vehicle teams use alien ships to push against the familiar and stretch the boundaries of what we know about the universe of Star Citizen, the mocap and gameplay story animation teams work to bring as much recognizable truth and authenticity of motion as they can to the smaller story elements that permeate throughout the Squadron 42 campaign experience.
The reason I got into motion capture is I wanted to tell believable stories. There's something I find quite fascinating about tricking people's emotions with, just the visual medium of whatever's on the screen, and motion capture plays a rather large part in that. Sometimes you can be looking at a head cam and just see like a particular moment for just half a second and know that that's going to be used, and the director can see it as well. It's those exciting moments on set and being able to see scenes be birthed from the stage itself that is why I got into motion capture.
What's interesting about gameplay story and seeing that in the game is an unintrusive way of delivering you small story elements or just bringing more life into the world as you walk around it.
Gameplay story is lots of smaller scenes, not full-blown cutscenes, but also not pure gameplay either.
So that could be walking into a bathroom and overhearing a conversation the user isn't necessarily triggering per se, or they can do small things to trigger, but at the same time they're happening in the universe as a living, breathing thing.
You and Yuri don't have to give us such a hard time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that someone else I heard moaning about having to recall all the diags last shift?
Yeah, okay. I haven't been the best either, but complaining's one thing. We used to complain about Nolan all the time too. I don't know, I think she could do a good job if we helped.
So I think the reason why motion capture's such a huge benefit for the game, for Squadron 42 and Star Citizen, is because we're able to shoot in a very short amount of time huge range of animations. And I think if you look at our database at the moment, we have something like 38,000 animations for this game. And that it's only because we're able to use motion capture to capture data very quickly and deliver that data to the teams very quickly.
So I think a common misconception with motion capture is that we capture all of this data and then it just seamlessly works with the engine. That definitely isn't the case.
After the mocap shoot's finished, I first need to use a wonderful tool the mocap team have written to actually make my selections, which is to choose which takes I actually want and which parts of those takes I want, whether they're going to be recalled and so on and so forth.
This data isn't always necessarily super clean as well, so it's the job of the mocap team to be able to track and retarget that data in order to then deliver it to the animators, who can then do a final pass and get it into game.
So doing pickup shoots is quite a natural part of the process, really. A lot of the original content that we got for Gameplay Story was captured some time ago, and the game has progressed a lot since then, and we just didn't.
The endless night was still and cold and vast. Yet in that moonless winter sky, unyielding they remained, tied to their mast. Forever watching, always standing by. Neath crushing blows, they fought on in our name. They battled bravely through endless wars. Our redemption, born of their bloody sacrifice, so that we might meet again on distant shores. It matters not whether they prevailed. For them, the cost was greater than single victories. Side by side, unafraid to fail. Their courage a beacon to guide humanity. Together, we are one.
For example, The other day we were doing pickups for a character who had to usher the player into a vent, and the original data for all of this kind of left that NPC bystanding, not doing a lot, whereas with the pickups that we've done now, she actually has a lot more life, and she actually, you know, beckons the player to go in multiple times if the player doesn't decide to do so. It's small things like that that create that believability in the world. It's extremely rewarding to see the finished product after you've done a shoot and it goes into game.
Put a lot of hard work into getting all of the scenes, nearly 250 scenes that have been shot. I don't want to make comparisons to other games, but yeah, I definitely think what we're doing goes far and above what's been done in other games, really, in terms of the immersion, the fact that somebody can be busy doing something and you can go up to them, you can have a conversation, you can break away from that conversation mid-flow, and all the animations match. The people aren't rambling, talking to themselves. The whole scene is believable at the start, the beginning, and the end.
You and Yuri don't have to give us such a hard time.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was that someone else I heard moaning about having to recall all the diags last shift?
Yeah, okay. I haven't been the best either, but complaining's one thing. We used to complain about Nolan all the time too. I don't know, I think she could do a good job if we helped.
Some people aren't cut out for command. Sink or swim, right?
Sure, but do you have to be the one who drowns her?
Point taken. I'll try.
Thanks. You ever think it's weird how much we still use all these water analogies in the Navy?
All the time. Hey, look who it is.
So what did we learn about this week? Well, we learned that the Talon brings more avian flair to the ever-developing alien Tavaran culture, that the work of motion capture isn't simply done when you just take off the suit, and that the Squadron 42 gameplay story team may work on the smaller elements, but they do add richness and texture to the larger campaign adventure. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. We'll see you next week. The Star Citizen universe is one whose destiny is to expand throughout the cosmos, beyond its planets and moons through nebula and jump points into the star systems that fill our galaxy. But with the upcoming Alpha 3.7, we're taking a look within, going deep below the surface to explore the cavernous depths of Stanton's planets and moons. From top to bottom, this week we're exploring the work bringing these new cave systems online, from the procedural tech that makes it possible, first revealed on SCL earlier this year, to the way designers use those tools for making traversable layouts suitable to a variety of gameplay needs, then finally how lighting and audio designers set the mood and create an atmosphere that brings the whole thing to life.
Sei mal fröhlicher, Mann. Du bist voll unhappy.
Ja, das ist mein Standard-Behavior.
Almost there. Ja. Okay, ich muss mich auflockern.
Cool.
Das ist kein Problem. On the last Inside Star Citizen, we were showing the entire R&D phase that we have done. So since then, we have actually finished up all of our assets.
Yeah, we've also involved all the other departments a bit more. We are actually quite happy since all the building blocks are now in. We are now able to generate a full cave. We had our caves being procedure generated by the layout tool, which is also used by the truck stops. And those truck stops, they float in space.
They don't have the planet and the terrain as a context to them. So that's why it was tricky for us to embed these entrances as caves nicely on the terrain and have them generated so they don't, you know, dip under the planet's surface and then dip out again. That would be quite problematic. So.
Yes. The content that gets created by the layout tool needed more information in order to work with those caves. And since the caves have to be put on planets, we used the placement tool that has been used for the outposts before. We actually managed to make it work, and now we are able to use the procedural layout tool together with the procedural placement tool on planets, which is a quite nice heads-up thing for the future whenever we want to create more content.
The harvestables and minables are scattered on tag points that are also procedurally scattered out in the caves. So yeah, actually it's not just going to be empty caves that you walk in and out, but there's actually things to find, stuff to do, right? Resources to gather. They are using our new organic shader, which allows us to go for a much higher fidelity, a much better definition in terms of shape. So it should be quite a level up in terms of quality for our geological assets.
We planned to add a little bit more breakup to our rocky archetype of caves. That means we have plant root-based elements that we overlay to break up the cold and harsh rocky angular surface.
So even though it's all procedural, we have a decent amount of control, which means that we can determine a cavern to be completely covered in roots, or have these glowworms sitting at the roof, and also the man-made content.
Those are basically abandoned camps that other NPCs left, and you're now able to discover that kind of stuff.
Sure.
So sometimes you might even find some dead NPCs in there, like people who tried to explore it but didn't survive.
Procedural dead people.
Oh yeah.
In the very first couple playtests, we realized that it is really difficult to tell where one should go, where you could climb onto and stuff like that. So we had to find a solution visually. And the solution for that actually was for us to add another element, which was like a little lichen layer on top of our rocks. And wherever that lichen is, we kind of try to navigate the player and lead the player towards the actual navigatable path.
We spent a lot of time walking through our own caves, and I've got lost myself as well, many times.
So maybe it will help with the orientation, because then you get in and you don't get lost, and maybe you can find yourself out. We're trying to push out for 3.7 and have the players test what we have right now, the very first version of the caves that has the most necessary elements in it to make up such cave. But for the future, it means that we have this very big, nice-to-have list of ideas and elements. Definitely want to tackle them in the future for sure, because it's way too exciting stuff.
With the tech developed by Patrick and Florian and others on the Planetary Content team, the process of implementing caves then moves on to designers to create and ensure properly traversable layouts that can be used for interesting combat, future missions, and the upcoming FPS mining gameplay feature.
For initial release, we are aiming for on-foot entrances. So we have uncharted and charted caves. There's also another secret variant that I won't mention. So the mood we were looking for in the cave is very close, very tight, very scary and dark, and very labyrinthine. For creating caves, we use the same technology that we use for creating rest stops. So what that is we create a rule set of rooms. So be that a connecting room that has 2 to 3 connectors on which we can connect corridors. And then the technology randomly generates whether that has a connecting corridor on it or just a cap. And then we can go from there, and you can extrapolate that into a massive cave, and we can create graphs within graphs within graphs, and it can just explode into big, beautiful interior spaces. So the things we have to consider for traversal is making sure there's a good sprinkling of gameplay elements, small spaces, large spaces, really tight little places you have to squeeze around. So you would be crawling under things, commando crawling under things, mantling up over stuff. So there's a really sense of a different height. So we really have to generate the graph and very carefully curate the order of the space and jump into game mode after we've generated it to make sure it feels right, really feels like you're splunking through a cave. So when we're generating caves, we have to consider the potential for FPS combat. So that would be making sure there's large open spaces that can hold more people, of course, because if you're fighting, there's more than one person. And then when it comes to FPS mining, we also have to think about where we want to spread the resources throughout the cave so that you have richer, potentially denser veins deeper in the cave, so you're rewarded for traversing through it. But for future releases, we'll be looking for massive sinkholes that you can land your ships in, and also huge cave entrances that you can drive your ground vehicles into. The players will notice there's areas of the caves that look lived in, and we aim to put AI there in the future so we can use those in missions and for other such exciting adventures. We're really hoping people enjoy the caves because they bring a big opportunity for nice, small, tight spaces that we don't usually explore in Star Citizen.
Once Gareth has validated a layout that works for all gameplay needs, it falls to our lighting artists to create an atmosphere that can both showcase the mysterious and unknown depths of any planet or moon, and present this new endeavor in an effective manner that allows you to see where you're going without breaking the mood.
Okay.
So just a clap.
Before we start with anything, with the lighting, we always to figure out what is the part that we need to focus on most. So for caves, the corners and the big rooms are the parts that we need to focus on, because it's very important to tell the player where you're at. We always give them a little bit of hint from the lighting. Like if there's a corner to the left, then we just put the lights to the left of the corner, so you can see, oh, there's a light coming through the left side. So it gives you a hint that, okay, maybe I can go that way, maybe I can just turn left to figure out where to go next. And also it's pretty dark, so it's very tricky to balance because you want it to be very realistic, you want it to be dark, but you also need to help the player not to get lost in the caves. So that's the biggest challenge. The atmosphere a little bit specular, especially on the cave rocks. There's some kind of parameters which gives me a lot of control. Like for example, when the player get closer to the field light, the field light will disappear, and surrounding you, it's gonna be pretty dark. But the other field lights are still on, so we use that kind of technology, like little tricks to keep you dark surrounding you, give you like this tiny and scary kind of feeling. Glowing worms are nice, they're beautiful.
In purpose.
Star Citizen is an ever-expanding universe, but now we're also going beneath the surface by adding a completely new, unique location, which is caves.
FPS mining in 3.7 is the most lucrative business by far. Discover deposits and mine them. If you don't bring protection, expect some risks and you might die and not make it out alive.
With mission sharing, you'll be able to take on harder missions with your friends. That means there'll be more rewards, such as loot, or maybe even reputation that you can share together.
Players can already earn ships in the game.
With the addition of ship rentals, this will allow the players to try out different professions and explore what suits their game style.
With the new quantum enforcement feature,
Players will be able to pull others out of Quantum Travel, at the same time preventing them from escaping into it.
The VFX team, they apply those particles on the rocks. When they finish their job, I just added those field lights to support these VFX. So yeah, when you go deeper down into the cave, maybe you encounter this kind of area with glowing worms all over the ceiling above you, which is, I think it's pretty nice effect and a very special experiment for the players. The flashlight is pretty tricky because it's so strong at the moment, so it's kind of like flattening everything, so all the work from the environment might be washed away because of that strong light. So the lighting team is working very closely with the engineering team as well to improve the torch light, make it more subtle, and even when you have the torch on, you are able to see what the cave looks like and still give you that kind of cinematic and moody cave. So yeah, that's what we are trying to fix.
But Arthur's lighting only gets us halfway to where we're going, as creating the proper soundscape is equally as important in adding character and flavor to these new subterranean environments. That's where James from the audio team comes in, as he takes the reins and brings the audible universe of Star Citizen to the cavernous reaches below.
So the idea behind the caves was to create a more eerie mood. So by doing this, I designed a bunch of drone sounds and then a bunch of like one-shots and things like that. And they trigger randomly throughout the caves. The deeper into the cave you go, the more of the one-shots you get and the drones duck down in sound, just to give it a more eerie, kind of creepy vibe. So I've made the actual ATSs visible here so you can see how the sound has been placed around the map. One of the challenges we faced with this is the markup's different from other locations, so we couldn't use like room shapes to mark it up. So these have got to have quite tight attenuation radiuses so the sounds don't bleed out throughout the map. So the idea behind the sounds for rooms like this is to have a lot of drones placed around the area and also fill the space out with one-shots. One of the problems we had for areas like this is that it sounded too low-passed and too bassy. So to bring out some high end, I've added some one-shots like rocks falling and things like that and water drips in the distance. And it just helps to make the space feel a bit more airy and add a bit of life to the area, while still sounding a little bit creepy. So this is what the caves look like from the outside. As you can see, they don't look like very much, but when we put these lights on, you can see that this is the basic room layout. So the floor actually gets like stuck on the bottom part here, and then I mark all the audio up in here. So you can see I've placed these speakers around the area, and these play like one-shots, debris falling, water drips, and drone sounds as well. So the idea is when you move around the room, the sound changes because you get closer to these speakers here. So as I go over here, you get less of these ones over here, which would be one-shots and drones. So it just gives the area a bit of movement to it. So although the room system looked a little bit confusing, once we're actually in the caves themselves, when they're all procedurally generated, it does make sense. What I would normally do is I'd walk through these caves and listen to the transition between the rooms, and then decide if I need to go back to the other room system and make any changes to it. One of the considerations for the caves was the actual reverb. So as you can see here, I've actually designed my own reverb sample for this. This is based on the room system, which encompasses the entire cave itself. Further down the line, I'd like to break this up into more granular pieces so we can set up reverb on small corridors and small parts of the cave, just so there's a bit of variety to it. I hope this gives you a good idea of how the sound design in the caves is done. When we add the mission givers and NPCs to the caves, it's going to create new challenges, things like how the voices are going to work in the caves with the new reverb system, and other things that go along with that, like what props are going to be there. This is going to present new challenges for the sound design team that I look forward to sharing with you.
So what did we learn this week? If anything, I hope we learned that creating these new cave systems is a collaborative endeavor involving even more than the 4 teams you saw here. That as Star Citizen continues to expand into the stars, there are plenty of opportunities for exploration and experience beneath the surface of our planets and moons. And that you can write an intro to the show about Plato's allegory of the cave, but the social media person is going to talk you out of it, and he's almost certainly right. To our subscribers, our thanks for making each and every show like this possible. And to everyone in the Star Citizen universe, we'll see you next week for a first look at FPS mining and the other features of Alpha 3.7. Until next time.
Thanks for watching. For the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42, you can subscribe to our channel, or you can check out some of the other shows, and you can also head to our website at www.robertspaceindustriescom. Thank you very much for watching.
Racing I enjoy because I think deep down everyone enjoys going fast in some aspects.
It's about the overtaking, you know, the racing that singular person. You get to follow them around and then you've got to work out a way to pass them.
You make little adjustments, you go a little bit faster, you push it a little bit harder, a little bit more to get a little bit more speed. It's a very satisfying loop.
In racing, it's a more controlled PvP environment, which is kind of like going to like pure peak performance of the player.
Racing in Star Citizen, I think there's a very dedicated core community to it, and they're doing an amazing job with what is there, and I hope in the future that we'll be able to provide a lot more support to them.
There are many ways to spend your time in the Star Citizen universe. That ever-expanding sandbox that lets you hunt dangerous criminals, haul cargo from one planet to another, harvest resources from asteroids to caves, and much, much more. But one aspect that's been driven almost entirely by the community is racing, a way to test the mettle of your pedal against other players at any time or place. That's why when a small handful of developers recently found themselves with just a little bit of spare time between tasks, they took inspiration from the community and created 2 new racing experiences for the persistent universe that we'll be showcasing here today. Now up first, let's learn how the Snake Pit Racetrack, originally conceived by the community, had its industrial makeover in the recently released Alpha 3.17.2.
The Snake Pit was actually inspired by videos from the community. It's this racetrack that's been proven to be fun and successful time and over again. I just figured why not try and bring it to the next level. I wanted to create something that's believable, that could tell a story like at a first glance, something that would be fun for the racers and something that would even be fun for any spectator that just wanted to come there, chill, watch the race. Because I had the idea to make this racetrack, I think it was the same day that we branched to go into Evocati. I had just a limited number of days before this could go to the backers and into the PTU. So everything we did for the racetrack needed to be assets that already existed if we wanted to make the cut for 3.17.2. The process was a couple of hours of going through assets, putting them on the planet, setting them up, seeing if they feel good. I wanted also to place a few landing pads here and there on like specific turns where people could just be there and watch the ships as they drift around those corners. The Snake Pit is way bigger than any racetrack that I would have imagined. I think most of the game devs that I know usually work on cool little things on their free time, whether it's work related or not. We just do it just to keep up with what's going on in the industry. I've worked on multiple AAA projects in other companies, and this is the only one where you're actually even encouraged a little bit to go out of the beaten path and talk to the community, listen to what they have to say, It's not something that you find anywhere else. So this is definitely, for me, is an added bonus to my work to just have this interaction with people.
Using the time between tasks while waiting for other resources to become available and making fun things inspired by the players has led to a number of features, assets, and otherwise neat stuff making their way to the persistent universe over the years. And it just so happens that one of the next ones is making its way to you in the upcoming Alpha 3.18, and it features a different kind of racing experience.
When we finished working on Siege of Orison, my lead approached me and told me about those convention halls, that they are most of the time empty in between the events, and maybe we should fill it with something fun for the player. We collected some ideas and decided to go for a buggy racetrack. When we started, we didn't want to take this go-kart track too serious. We wanted to make something colorful and playful. So our main inspirations were obviously a very popular racing game. We took also inspirations from laser tag, those blacklight paintball arenas, stuff like that. So I had 3 weeks in total to finish the whole racetrack, from the first idea to the final product. It was basically a one-man project. I tried to make the racetrack as modular as possible, so I created a few of those racetrack pieces and just put them together in a way that it's fun for me to play it. My favorite part of the racetrack is probably where you have to jump over.
Defender, we're introducing the first ship of a brand new alien species, which is exciting because it'll be the first time we get a really good look at what the band would actually look like and where they live. And it looks awesome.
So with 3.7, new players will start seeing the glimpses of what we're trying to do.
So see you in the verse.
Attention, people of Stanton.
We have been testing the racetrack internally, and it's already a lot of fun. The physics of the Grey Cats is something we are looking into, because we also had a loop-the-loop, but the Grey Cats were not fast enough to take it, so we had to cut it out. But in the future, we hope that we can put it in.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that the staggered nature of video game development can often lead to fun little side projects by developers with big amounts of fun. That the team here continues to not just take feedback from the community, but inspiration for their work as well. And that racing is in the hearts of many of our developers, and we're always going to look for more ways to squeeze just a little more in here and there whenever we can. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Behind me is our new, still under construction performance capture studio right next door to the Manchester Goods Yard building, soon to be home to CIG Manchester, and where you can be very certain I'm going to do many silly and stupid things when the time arrives. And to my left is the Rover's Return Inn from some UK soap opera that everybody here tells me was a big deal. We'll see you all next week. As the first quarter of 2023 comes to a close, we're hitting a few milestones here for what we call internally the Evergreen Content Team. That's the folks that are dedicated to the creation of weekly, recurring, some might say evergreen video content. For Inside Star Citizen, today's show represents the completion of our 4th year and 150th episode since that first evolution from Around the Verse in 2019. And when you factor in the legacy of ATV and Wingman's Hangar before that, we're now just passing the 450th episode of this continuing behind-the-scenes series unlike anything you'll find from any game developer anywhere else. And yet, somehow, still we never show anything good. It also marks the personal completion for me of 8 years shepherding over 1,200 videos showcasing the creation of this project. Even that one holiday live stream we don't like to talk about anymore. So to sign us off for this quarter, before we go about our regularly scheduled hiatus, we're bringing back an old favorite, that grab bag of tiny looks at various aspects from all over development, the Sprint Report. Now, for those of you who maybe have never seen one of these before, a sprint is what we call the internal 2-week cadence where developers go off on a task, come back to check in, see everyone's progress, get some notes, and then either move on to something else or go back for another 2-week sprint on the same feature. So, what that means is what you're going to see here this week is actually internal developer art, the kind they don't usually make to be seen publicly. It's not the flashy and somewhat mentally unstable work of the ISC gameplay capture team, who have been on quite a streak recently, possibly because we changed their medications. So without further ado, let's jump into the Inside Star Citizen Q1 2023 Sprint Report and Clam Bake Showdown. I'm assuming that editorial will put a nice, subtle title on screen right here. Also, there's no Clam Bake Showdown. I don't know why I said that. Let's start things off with some spacecraft and vehicles, where there was recently a small onboarding task for a new hire to update the remote turrets for the 600i from Origin, which you can see here. I think we can all agree it's a noticeable improvement over what's in the game today. And if you watched last week's ISC on the upcoming changes to tractor beams in Alpha 319 and beyond, you might have noticed the Argo SRV flying around in that Beyond section. Here's a closer look at its progress as it currently makes its way through final art towards a scheduled release later this year. Now, for those who follow the progress tracker on the public roadmap, here are your first looks at 3 vehicles currently making their journeys throughout the pipeline, starting with the RSI Lynx Rover, companion sojourner to the famous Ursa we all know and love, an often found package with the luxurious Constellation Phoenix. It's currently in gray box phase, and it's nice to see the RSI styling continue to evolve. Especially with those tires. I mean, I'm not usually a tires are cool dude, but those are cool tires, right? And as we move inside, we can take a look at the cockpit coming along. And then there's the rear, which is at the back, and which is already far more fancy than its Ursa brethren. Okay, I thought the tires were cool, but can a chair also be cool? Because that looks like a comfy ass chair. Can I say that? No, I just edited it out. Yeah, it'll be fine. Good job. There's also the Crusader Spirit, which just entered gray box phase recently. You can see here early work on the exterior, making certain every part of it matches the metrics laid out in the white box phase before it. Then popping in through the rear of the ship, which, like the Lynx, is also in the back. And then into the cockpit that's looking, well, a bit contrasty at the moment. But that's not uncommon for gray box phase, as this period is mostly about defining shape language and material breakup before everything gets refined later in final art phase. And then let's take a look at the gray box bomb bay for the bomber variant that's being worked on in tandem with all the others. Finally, let's look at recent gray box progress on the Apoa Santok Yai, the alien Shion fighter, where you can see the exterior coming along pretty well. The thrusters are being modeled out. And they've started exploring how the landing gear will work, experimenting with the shape language a bit to make certain they're beefy enough to believably hold the mass of this entire ship when all is said and done. And as for when you're going to see the 600i turret, the Lynx, the SRV, the Spirit, the Santok Yai, and more make their way into the persistent universe, I'd recommend as always keeping an eye on the public roadmap for details when they become available. Now let's move from ships that fly to winged creatures. As astute readers of the monthly report might already be aware, one of the many things the AI team is currently working on is pushing Boyd's development in the persistent universe. Now, Boyds are the algorithmic behavior of small creatures that can populate the planets and moons of the persistent universe, with a test here of condors slowly learning to avoid flying into mountains or drowning in the oceans beneath them. Dun 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 Condor Man. Nobody, huh? Just me? And then some work on ocean fish. Here, completely, totally, and utterly unanimated. It's just a test of behaviors here, people, without all the motion parameters that'll make them look good one day.
Now, I'm including this as a test. If I see all you out there on the internet's like, these Star Citizen fish look great, I'm gonna know you don't listen to a word I'm saying. My feelings will be hurt.
Meanwhile, the Interactables team, formerly known as the Props team, have been running through and physicalizing a bunch of assets for the persistent universe, like these weights for gyms like the ones you might find in New Babbage. Similar to the fish we just watched, this is also before animation has had their chance to contribute, so let's not judge the throwing form being displayed here. Still, it's nice to see even the littlest things in the verse behave naturally with realistic mass and physics whenever possible. This effort to make things behave as you'd expect them to also extends to the coffee machines of the verse, with a pass recently done to go through and repair their broken functionality. Now, I did consider turning this section into an update on either bartender or mess hall features, just for old time's sake, but someone who will go unnamed stopped me. Just know that there are heroes out there looking out for each and every one of you. Also, it looks like the team developed a few new coffee mugs along the way. We'll just let this video play for a bit. see a couple coffee cups in action, and think about how much bartender stuff I'm not talking about right now. Also, speaking of bartenders, if you want some interactables of your own, there's this new set of Star Citizen pint glasses up for pre-order on the web store. I asked if they wanted me to promote them, and they said no, because you'll probably do something silly and stupid with it. And I said, leave it with me. And they said, what? No, we said no. And I said, no problem. And here we are. Back to the Interactables team, they've also been prototyping a new way to hang a variety of posters on the walls of the player habs and spacecraft with these new, expanding electronic devices that could let you decorate any space that's marked up for them. The prototyping here is using common adverts for in-universe events, but the possibilities of this feature become apparent very quickly in allowing players to not only decorate their spaces, but to collect and memorialize important moments from their time in the persistent universe, to take missions to set up flyers for in-game shops or events, post bulletins for bounty missions, and much, much more. And this last bit is from both the Interactables and Mission Feature team, who have been developing the next dangerous new contraband to sweep its way through the persistent universe, grasping weevil eggs. Grasping weevil eggs. Is this what's the file name? Oh, no, that's what it is. Huh. Let's switch on over to the environment, planetary, and lighting team's work with these images of updated atmosphere progress for the planet Hurston, which adds a stronger layer of pollution much closer to the planet's surface that helps suck light out of the atmosphere, add a richer gradient, and really just makes the place seem dirtier overall.
Pure speed. Every year, it feels like the offerings here at the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo get faster. Or Maybe I'm just getting slower.
Coming Lord
Probably a little of both.
Build 2.0 and Alpha 3.19, some of which you can see here. I'm just gonna let these images speak for themselves a bit. And we'll take a deeper look at how light, atmosphere, and the new cityscape all come together in Alpha 3.19 when ISC returns from hiatus in just a few weeks. And while the atmosphere of Hurston is getting a little love, so too are the verdant forests of Microtech. As part of a greater overall overhaul we'll be discussing more of in the coming months, the forests of Microtech are receiving a performative refresh that will make the environment seem richer and denser visually, while providing more gameplay opportunities for cover during missions, racing, and other activities galore. The landing zone teams have also completed a sprint adding additional mission locations scattered around the planet Crusader in the style of resort hotels that can utilize overlays for pleasant, in-use active businesses as well as those taken over by the ever-present and vile Ninetales. Each new cluster is designed to be a procedural home for a variety of mission types and looks to draw players out from Orizon and into the far corners of the gas giant. And down on the surface of Hurston, work is underway on an early white box phase of local law enforcement offices, a place for players to utilize the next evolution of bounty hunting gameplay we'll discuss more about later this year, to collect, or in this case, drop off the captured bodies of criminal outlaws collected by players. Now the drop off here is right up front, cause in early tests, it was getting kinda weird just walking through the hallways, pushing bodies deeper and deeper into the facility. Unless you're into that sort of thing. Moist Noodle. You can then also check out the bounty boards to collect new missions here, or go forward into the shop and resupply as needed. And there's an office for meetings, but who needs more of those in life? And then we bring ourselves to the detention area, where a number of cells can vary from location to location. I suspect that many of you will be looking forward to spending your time anywhere else besides Kleischer, even if it's just a jail and not a prison. Also in white boxes, the pre-production blockouts for a variety of building interior modules that will fit inside the towering skyscrapers of New Babbage on Microtech, being developed and tested in situ simultaneously to work out and discover anything developers might not have considered or recognized as necessary in the original mandate. The idea here is that once the player lands, they would enter this particular interior from the very top, encountering a lobby and expected elevators. Then, after a brief trip down, emerge into a number of different interior modules such as block of player apartments seen in the example here. And speaking of modular interiors, the Montreal Tools team continues their work refining the very process used to make locations for the persistent universe, including several sprints on something called the PU Locations tool, a plugin that artists and designers can use to build and iterate modular locations quickly for the various star systems of the persistent universe. What you're seeing here is the PU Locations tool fully integrated into the game editor, where this person has decided they wish to create a space clinic in Pyro. No doubt a location players will visit quite often in the lawless frontier that awaits. Next, let's cook the first module, which is the lobby and includes the relevant connectors necessary so that the player can traverse from one room to the other without falling through into the cold depths of space. It's important players feel safe in their space stations, at least from the environment art. Legal note, this does not extend to elevators, which are a unique curse upon players and developers alike. Next is what's called the Universal Room, which is a super fancy programmer term for hallway. They know it's true. We can even change the seed if we don't like that particular hallway and generate another and another, each one creating the various connectors needed for us to continue building. And then some side rooms, or in rare cases, a rear room, which is usually at the back. Some shops like the pharmacy. Oops, insert. I'm going to leave that in there for solidarity with developer pain. Now let's go inside and start cooking some overlays, which is basically everything involved in the set decor that will further distinguish one space clinic from the next. Things are pretty generic at the moment, so we turn on our viz areas, check our tags, start the cook, and whoa, nice. We move forward. Looks like we forgot to cook a container. Easy enough. We're not going to put rooms here, so let's go ahead and start closing these connectors off. And then we can cook us up another overlay for this side room here. Nice. And this process is repeated in all subsequent rooms, and overall it's another terrific example of how game development is exponential and absolutely non-linear in progress.
Now, as asset libraries are built and grown and tools are conceived and iterated on, the progress you can make at one point should be exceeded by the next, and overall becomes a continuing reminder that the struggle of what comes before is necessary and right to birth the improved technologies, efficiencies, and general effectivenesses of everything that comes next, including a new version that does everything you just saw in one click that recently became available to developers.
And while we're talking new technologies, let's wrap things up this week with some work from the PU character art team, which had a small sprint working to convert some of our older legacy assets to newer resources that have been developed over recent years, including Layer Blend V2 and the ability to spawn items with specific levels of wear and decay. So this means that not every version you find out in the verse is going to look exactly the same. The team is also using the opportunity to discover more chances to further modularize existing armors like the Nomad and Light Outlaw you're seeing here, as well as many more we'll be showcasing later this year. It's part of a continuing effort to add more customization to what you wear in both the new stuff that's coming down the pipeline and what's already there in the persistent universe. And that customization also extends to a variety of tints that can be used for spawning armor variants within the universe, which you can see in some early explorations here. This will allow mission and location designers to specify specific variations of components and tints for different areas, or use procedural tools to randomly generate dozens and dozens of variations for each outfit. And when that gets extended to many of the outfits already within the universe, this will get us a far greater variety of things within the persistent universe than we have today.
And oh heck, I know I said we were going to wait until our last big segment on Lorville in just a couple weeks once we return from hiatus, but let's go ahead and leave you with just a few shots of the absolutely fantastic work the lighting team is doing bringing this new Lorville 2.0 to life.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut up and let several thousand words of images do the talking instead.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that there are, as always, a lot of ships and vehicles in the pipeline, all scheduled to make their way to the persistent universe throughout the remainder of this year. That work to bring fauna to the persistent universe is back on the menu. That grasping weevil eggs are a thing, as is the continuing work to physicalize as many aspects of Star Citizen as possible. That locations, new and old, continue to be iterated on and improved upon, as do the tools our team members use to create them, and that boy howdy gee willikers, I'm pretty certain we're just gonna park the only constant outside Lorville at night for all of Star Citizen Live next quarter. Now, as we're at the end of this quarter, ISC is going on its regularly scheduled hiatus. But But the work doesn't stop there. Next quarter, we'll be back with our final looks at Lorville 2.0 before it goes live in Alpha 3.19. We're going to take a deeper look at the vast changes and improvements coming to Arena Commander after that, as well as the new derelict settlement towns, new player experience tutorial, a sequel to the buggy racetrack in Orison, but for Microtech, explorations of the new ships and vehicles arriving at this year's Invictus launch week, a discussion with superstar concept artist Gavin Rothery about envisioning more ships for Star Citizen than anyone else alive. We're going to look ahead to a whole bunch of new features coming in Alpha 3.20, and then of course continuing our journey to 4.0 here and there along the way. It's been one hell of an 8 years, and the last 4 of them bringing 150 episodes of this show to you has been a blast. And we're still getting better at doing so each and every week. Now, I can say that because I'm not talking about myself. I'm referring to the talents and work of Will, Dave, Alex, Casey, Jill, Stephanie, Amanda, Caroline, Tom, David, Luke, Justin, Jake, Vicky, and now Mercy, welcome to the team, who have all made this last year the best one yet. Thanks for putting up with me, and here's to another 150 more. Oh, and if you've noticed and liked the 10 different memes that have been here on the screen all quarter, we'll be releasing them to the social media later this week. I can tell you they make great phone wallpapers. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for watching, thanks for 150 episodes, and we'll see you back here in about a month.
I'm sitting here in a Kruger Archimedes. It may be a snub craft, but when you top out at 1,340 meters per second, well, no quantum drive, no problem. Jimmy is currently queuing up to purchase a presumably delightful frozen dessert down in the expo hall. Personally, I'm an Irma's farm man. Now, if this little minx is as speedy as they say she is, I should be able to get to the Irma's in Area 7, procure a tasty treat, and make it back both before it melts and before Jimmy gets through that massive line. Thanks, Wendy. Close, but no cigar, Jimmy. Hats off, Kruger. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to hunker down and determine which of these desserts is the true champion of this segment. So stick around for more Whitley's Guide.
Saw something that wasn't there. In the corner of your eye. A light dance, just out of frame. Blink, hell, breathe, and you've missed it. There. Did you see it? Or was it just another trick of the light? Sometimes, if you're lucky enough, you might just catch lightning in a bottle. The Aegis Saber Peregrine. Catch it if you can.
Stop right there. This claim is ours. I'll make this easy for you. Leave now, or we'll kill you. I'm happy either way.
The time has come for something new. Something to change the game. When seeking fortunes at the fringes of civilization, you need someone you can trust. In this age of uncertainty, it's time to take back your strength. It's time to release the Kraken. Drake Interplanetary. We got your back.
It's been a long time since I've been in front of a camera, so this is a new experience for me. Fresh one. But yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Who's going to do better, you or Graham?
Graham, he's an old hat. He knows what he's doing.
Oh, hi. Didn't notice you there. So today we're talking about resonance within the Claudius tool. What's Claudius? Tough question. Okay. Claudius is our new audio tool that brings together all the different audio functions into one place so that the sound designers can access everything they need
without going through needless code requests all the time. My favorite thing about Claudius is the fact that I won't have to jump into so many different tools and programs to get in-game and get the sound sounding the way that I want them to and the way that I envision them in my head.
We did a whole thing on it at CitizenCon a few years ago. You should go watch it. I'll just wait. I'm much more natural on that camera when I'm not looking at the television.
One of the ways in which we're looking to improve the audio experience of Star Citizen is to find ways to better meet the player's expectations of what is being heard in the game world. We already create the sounds that you would expect for objects and interactions in the game, and glue them together with reverb and effects, but we can always go further.
Our latest piece of tech within the Claudius editor is resonance, which allows us to take a game event that is either loud or particularly high sound pressure and make other elements of the game respond in much the same way as you would expect in the real world.
Resonance, put simply, is the sensitivity of objects to vibration, and in terms of our tech, it's the sound that they make as a result. We're aiming to fill a gap that currently exists with certain things not dynamically responding, at least in an audible sense, to player input and events transpiring in the world. We want to add another layer to the soundscape that just sprinkles a little more life into it and makes it just that little bit more real. You're there, you're experiencing it.
Our new tech allows us to quickly create resonances around points in the world in response to game events that can then be reflected by the objects and geometry around those points. We can add a resonance driver node in Claudius and set the size of its sphere of influence and also how long it takes to decay to nothing. We can then add resonator nodes to any audio object that we see fit. When the resonator is caught in the sphere of influence of the driver during gameplay, we use the resulting output to decide how loudly the object should resonate. What we're saying is we're taking game events in the world and we're trying to make the world around you respond in a much more realistic way to what you're doing. So if you're firing a weapon next to a window, you'd expect it to go or something like that, you know, a metal panel, sheet panel, that kind of thing. We can also set frequencies for both the driver and the resonator and make them respond only if the driver hits the resonant frequency of the resonator. So basically, if the frequency of a driver is changing, it might hit a certain frequency that excites an object much more than it does at other frequencies. Even with a simple example, there's already a greater sense of cause and effect. The props around you feel connected to your actions and you feel more immersed as a result.
This being implemented via Claudius in the straightforward visual logic-based scripting way means that getting your sounds in-game and working is just that much quicker. There are so many interweaving systems at play on the engine side that it usually can prove a challenge to get the desired outcome. Just from the resonator and resonance nodes alone, we can manage quick tweaks to dial in the exact kind of sounds we're wanting. And we're having it happen live and in context as we go.
Claudius's design philosophy is to put workflow first. And with this in mind, the resonance tech makes it easy to take a location or ship and populate it with the kind of responses you hear happening around you in real life. The potential here is large, so having a tool that makes it easy becomes incredibly important.
The underlying tech is designed to give the designers everything they need to implement. We're not relying on repeated code support requests to get this kind of dynamism in for our sounds. No one knows what you need to achieve the result you're aiming for in your head better than yourself. And that can take time and iteration, but here we have all the tools to do that by ourselves.
So now we can take a location, look around it, and think about what we'd expect to hear when, for example, a weapon is fired, and quickly add the markup to the game to make it do what we expect. Here we can see a few candidates: metal locker doors, a waste bin, empty cans, some windows, containers. By adding audio components to these objects or adding audio entities to the world markup, we can easily create their resonant responses.
Adding these resonances brings variety and realism to the soundscape. So we're no longer just hearing weapons and reverb, we're now hearing the objects and materials around the player too. We can use the tech to support visual physical movements or even to imply them using audio alone. We can listen to the resonances in isolation to understand what's being added here.
This system is hooked into our propagation tech, which allows sounds to respect paths through rooms and doorways to reach the listener, normally the player. But in this case, rather than ensuring that what you hear respects the propagation paths within the world, we use the system to decide whether, for example, a resonance driver in one room should excite a resonator in another. So basically, if someone fires a weapon within a room, the objects in that room will vibrate differently to any objects that are outside that room.
As with all tech, we have things to consider from a design perspective. There isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all system. Take, for example, you're in a ship. You might want to let the players experience a huge impact from a missile. It's a given you'd expect the ship and its internal contents to resonate when that happens, and this is perfect for that. But what about continuous resonances in a ship? We may want to use the system much more sparingly in these cases in order to avoid fatigue and focus more on the transient resonances as they convey more important information to the player. Much like a computer, the system needs rules to govern its output, so design needs to inform the system how it should be behaving. Resonance can become more of an event to convey excitement and useful information. It should serve the experience and could help make scenes pop from an audio perspective.
Too. And now you prove the point. You looked at me, 1 and 1 became 2. I'm glad we drew that joint. I do adore our family of 4, and life is simply grand. I've come alive like jazz in 5 because you took my hand.
Watch your back now. He's close.
He better be. I heard they found Leica with one over near Lyria. Took 15 roughnecks to bring him down.
Everyone after these things is really out for blood, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So watch the perimeter.
Copy that.
You sure this marker is accurate?
Yeah, you should be right up on him in 3, 2...
What the?
Ow. You good?
Is that? Holy shit! He has one. Here.
Wait.
We're good.
Wait.
No. What's wrong?
The marker. It's on you.
What do you mean?
Everyone knows! Get out of there! Now!
Of using propagation to ensure that resonances don't travel through walls or geometry, we can see that there are cases where we may want it to do just that. A ship receiving an impact from a huge missile would have vibrations resonating through its structure, which in turn would resonate its contents. By vibrating the ship and the objects around the player, the impact becomes much more visceral and feels like a direct threat to the player, rather than an event that just happened to some other part of the ship. The player's experience of the impact can then be more reflective of the damage done to their ship. So this is cool because if you have a huge impact that's hitting your ship, yeah, if you're in the cockpit, you can see the impact, you can really feel it there. But if you're down in the guts of the ship in an engineering role or something like that, and impacts are happening on the ship, you're maybe not going to feel it so much. So what this system does is it brings the whole experience of the ship being hit to wherever you are.
Resonance also sits nicely alongside our physical audio system, which handles the audio for the physicalization of props and objects in the world. You can already hear audible actions in the game, such as objects being thrown, rolled, handled, or impacted. This adds another layer to that physicality. Though with Resonance, it doesn't need to be beholden to the physics of an object.
Claudius and its underlying engine, SIG Audio, have been designed with rapid feature development at their core. Now that a lot of the hard work under the hood has been done, we're able to quickly develop and iterate on features such as Resonance that allow us to improve the experience of Star Citizen and enhance immersion to create a living, breathing world.
As with all Claudius features, this is available to any object in any context, so its use doesn't even have to be limited to what we've shown here. For example, we could use the blast radius of an explosion to drive the player's ear-ringing effect using the same system. Or we could affect mix changes within the radius of an event, such as a large explosion, ducking the other sounds around it to make even more room for impact. The tools are developed with creative freedom in mind and ultimately encourage experimentation.
So usually the graphics and the visuals get all the headlines, but to us, the audio is equally, if not more, important. And we hope that you'll feel the same when all this work comes online.
How'd I do?
Good.
Thank you.
So, what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that Claudius and its procedural audio tools allow for the systemic propagation of sounds in ships, stations, and space above and beyond. And that reverberations don't just mean the events around you sounding and feeling as they should, they can also lead to tactical and gameplay implications for combat, wear and tear, and much, much more. Now, don't forget that Ship Showdown is heading into the top 16 in just the next few days, and of course, the Mission Spotlight is still underway. And then, of course, we're only 9 weeks away. 9 weeks away. 9 weeks away from CitizenCon 2953, the now 2-day event at the Los Angeles Convention Center, and tickets are still available. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee. Thanks for letting us share the process of game development with you, and we'll see you all here next week.
Liberty, ingenuity, equality. These ideals connect each and every one of us across this vast empire of stars. As such, I want you all to meet the 2952 Cutter from Drake Interplanetary. Oh yeah. This ship embodies those ideals that we are truly democratizing spaceflight.
Who needs to hire talent when the aerospace CEOs are dying to get on camera? Hey, Jimmy?
It's all about the hard-working people of the UEE. That's why we're excited to sponsor the Intergalactic Aerospace Expo 2952. See you in STEM.
in the unholy hell? They think I'm dead? Unbelievable! Bob! I cannot believe that they moved on without me. After everything I did for them, would a call have killed them? Oh, hey, Jax, do you want to come back, host the show? I'm sorry, Jax can't take your call because he's dead. Bob! Bob, now, I need to take the corset.
Good one.
Now, I came out here to get inspired, and I've just been hanging around, tending to my garden, and pillaging and plundering with you lot.
Are you talking to me?
You don't understand, Bob. My bosses have killed me off screen. I've got to get back to Stanton. Is this ship flight ready?
Whoa! Whoa, Jax! But you can't have my ship.
Oh, come on, Bob, you owe me. You stole my Odyssey right when I got to Pyro.
But you stole it back.
And crashed it.
And crashed it.
Well, fair point. Did the boys already chop that new Drake cutter?
No, I told you I'm keeping that one. I kind of like it. Handle's nice.
Bob! Please?
No.
But it's just sitting there.
You know what, Jax? Fine. If it'll keep you out of trouble for a while, you can borrow the cutter.
Thank you, Bob.
I said borrow.
Thanks, Bob.
Jax!
Bye.
Don't fly angry!
Right. Are we on? Okay, right. Jax McCleary here. Obviously, I'm not dead. Just thought you should know. Looks like we're going back to Stanton. Here we go! Okay. Throttle's over here. Interesting. That does make a little bit more sense. Okay. Here we go.
I think the clicker's actually broken. Hey everyone, so I hope you've had a great day and sat and saw a bunch of the panels. There's some very, very cool stuff that various developers were showing. So hopefully, and the panels you didn't get to see, they'll all be on YouTube, so check them out afterwards. Okay. Yeah, it's not working. Well, it's come back. Okay. Yeah, it's broken. Yeah, what is life? I don't know. What is release? Okay, calm down, everybody. Chill out. So we were actually debating about the road to release, discussing that for Star Citizen, and we were talking about whether we were going to go up with 100 bullet points and talk about all these features. And myself and Aaron and Todd Pappy and Tony were all having a sort of discussion about what the core meaning, the core elements, and the core technology that we felt would create an experience that sort of defined the game and also was worthy of playing, irrelevant of whether the full feature set is finished or all the content in terms of planets and locations is done. Because for us, when we think about release, I mean, we're really releasing every 3 months now. So we got 3.3 just about ready to come. We just had 3.2, we had 3.1, and we're running a live game, and that's sort of the epiphany that we've had internally, which is, okay, we need to focus on how the game plays now. We've got to improve the quality of life. We've got to improve the user experience, the UI, how you get into it, make it accessible, ensure that the gameplay right now is polished. We're not there yet, but we are definitely working towards that every single release. And that is a priority for us. But for us, we were looking, okay, what was going to define the experience? That's the big vision of Star Citizen. And really for us, when we hit these milestones, then for us, we say, okay, I think this will be the core experience and tech that will deliver the vision of Star Citizen. So we can go, oh, look at that. Does it go back? Oh, it's working now, so here you go. So the very first one was the ability to be inside a ship, right? So it's not just a cockpit, it's an actual fully real, tactile, physicalized ship that has engine room, beds, toilets, mess hall, whatever you would imagine to be in a ship of that particular size. And there we go. And we did that. That was the very beginning thing that we did, the hangar module, which we did back in 13. The next was space combat, which was about, okay, I'm going to get in my ship, I'm going to fly around, I'm going to dogfight, which I'm pretty sure you guys remember is what we did with Arena Commander. The next key technical milestone was the 64-bit floating precision, so moving from 32-bit to 64-bit, so we can have sort of millimeter resolution and going all the way to billions of kilometers, which is what we need for Star Citizen, because we model entire star systems that have to be billions of kilometers across, but we need millimeter visual precision because you're right up there looking at your cockpit in first person, it's only a foot or two away, and 32-bit precision just doesn't cut it, and that's why most games, FPS games, most engines now are on 32-bit, and if you see them, they find it very hard to have play areas bigger than 16 kilometers on a side, right? And they brag about, oh, we got this really big play area, and it's a couple of kilometers across. So that and the physics grids, which allow us to simulate separate physical worlds. When you're flying.
tug. 24 scars across his mug. Said to me, let me tell you, son, got a tale for each and every one. Hey ho, it's time to go, and we'll be home, the devil knows. Hey ho, it's time to go away, away, away. That one there above your eye. I crashed a snub and nearly died. That nasty one that splits your lip. Barkeep, I forgot to tip. Hey ho, it's time to go, and we'll be home, the devil knows. Hey ho, it's time to go away, away, away. That one there beneath your mouth. Got it in a trigger, game gone south. Hey! That one there that cleaved your ear. Another that I once held dear. Hey ho, it's time to go, and we'll be home, the devil knows. Hey ho, it's time to go away, away, away. That one there across your nose.
Trying to change a cooling hose.
That one there across your cheek. I got it in a bar fight just last week. Hey ho, it's time to go, and we'll be home, the devil knows. Hey ho, it's time to go away, away, away. Hey ho, it's time to go, and we'll be home, the devil knows.
Or if you're on a planet it's rotating around a star or spinning on its axis for night and day. So that was a very critical piece of tech. And of course, that was, what is wrong with this thing? Okay, that was SC Alpha 2.0, unless Paul's trying to read my mind over there. Then the next key element to the gameplay we wanted was having the ability to earn money and have a level of persistence, which was I can go out and I can earn some money, I can buy some things, I log off, I come back on, I've still got those things. And that was, click Paul, there you go. Alpha 2.4, where we had our very first basic persistence. It was only very limited, didn't have persistence of location and a bunch of other stuff. Then the next big milestone that we needed to solve, which I don't know why we've gone, go back? Okay, there you go. Yeah, I'll say go forward. I'll say go forward, and then you go forward. Just wait for me to say go forward. Was first and third unification of the character, and we've talked about it a lot. But it's most first-person games cheat, and they have very different animations and models for first person to third person. And then when they have their multiplayer, say battle mode, they have limited amount of actions that you can see on a third person player character that's doing, because it's very difficult to sync up the actions. But for us, since it's going to be an MMO with thousands of people, you can be sitting right next to your friend, and he's interacting with the dashboard just like you are. So you're seeing him do the same thing in third person that you're doing in first person. Also, where our guns actually aim is where the gun is really aiming. It's not sort of cheating at where the mouse cursor is. So we needed to unify it. It was quite a difficult task. But we did it. Let's go forward. And that was really kind of what Star Marine was. We had early parts of it before that. The next big thing was the planet tech. So you can see the planet or the moon, and you can go there, and you can walk around it. You can explore every single inch. So there's no fake loading screens. There's no transition down to it. There's no go down. You can only land on a certain area. And that was the procedural planet tech, which we debuted, go forward, with 3.0. And the other big thing was location persistence, which is the ability that you go to a location, you log out, you come back, you're at that location. You're not starting back at where you started before. And again, that was at the first stage, go forward, Paul, with 3.0. And the next big thing, which is where we're at right now, is object container streaming and bind culling. And this is actually a massive thing. I think we've talked about it. We thought originally when we scheduled it out, it was going to take about 6 months. It's been about 18 months of solid development on it. And as you all know, bind culling has been something that we've had on our roadmap, and it's been pushed back and pushed back, pushed back. And that wasn't necessarily because we wanted to push it back. It was mostly because it turned out both the object container streaming and the bind culling needs object container streaming to really make sense. And object container streaming was incredibly complicated because we had to re-engineer most of the game engine itself, because for object container streaming to work at our scale where we're moving around, we have to be able to stream in the objects and textures and models and all the data and initialize them all completely asynchronously. So the game's running here, meanwhile it's loading up the stuff that will be over here or over here or over here, and we don't know where the player's going to go, and it's complicated because it's multiplayer. So in multiplayer, we have all these different players that have been going in different directions, so we need to be able to have object container streaming that works both on the clients and on the servers, and bind culling that's going to work on the clients and ultimately on the servers. So with 3.3, this is the first use of the object container streaming and the bind culling tech. It makes a massive difference in terms of performance, because you're only worrying about having the part of the world that's relevant to your character streamed in, which means you don't have to simulate all the objects in the entire solar system. You don't have to worry about them. They don't take up memory. So it's better for memory. It's better for performance. And as we've said on ATV, and I think in our newsletters, we've had some really great results so far. I mean, it has stability issues right now because, again, when something's multi-threaded and asynchronous, there's a lot of unpredictability, because when two different threads are stepping on each other, it can have unpredictable results. But it's a massive step forward, because the biggest thing for us to be able to scale the game and also have performance is this tech here. So we're really quite excited to get this out, because it also now allows us to start building out in the Stanton system, because before that, as everyone knows, even with 3.0, 3.1, 3.2, the memory use of Star Citizen was way too high for where we want to be, and we just couldn't fit anything more in memory at the same time. So object container streaming allows us to do that, and so that's a massive win for us. So let's move forward, Paul, and that's going to come with 3.3, which we're imminent doing. The next big sort of pillar is the ability to either buy or rent ships. And that's because the game loop is essentially going around earning money. So there's various ways to earn money. There will be more ways to earn money as we flesh out the professions. But once we earn the money, we want to spend it on something. So there's only so many suits of armor or guns you can buy. And the core sort of upgrade loop in the game is really the ships. The ships allow you to do bigger and better things, different professions. And so as a player, you want to earn money and then upgrade, and then that ship will allow you to earn more money and upgrade to a bigger, better thing and do different things. And so that was very important for us to get in. It's going to be in 3.3, both the purchasing and renting. Obviously, there's going to be some time where we adjust to try to get the economy to work properly, because we do have a problem that you can buy the equivalent of a Cessna or a nuclear carrier. And there's only like one nation on Earth, the one we're in right now, that can afford to spend $10 billion on a nuclear carrier. But we in our game sort of allow the player to have that huge range. So you've got to figure out how we make that work on an economic basis on the low end and progressing to the high end. So I'm sure it'll take a bit of time to dial it in. But it's a major point for us. So let's move forward. And that shall be in 3.3. So then the next big pillar, and there's 12 pillars that Erin, Tony, Todd, myself, identified that we felt were really important. And the organization system, so we already have a version of it online, but this is the organization system inside the game. So you can get your org mates together, you can do things like assign out roles or missions or cost share or revenue share, specify ties for the group, or however you would like to organize it into different pods or modules. For communication reasons, and we want to move that in, so build it further out on the website for some of that stuff, and then bring it across into the game, and you have all that. So you and your friends can create your organizations or groups as small or as big as you want. And then we move forward. Full persistence is the next big thing. It's the 11th thing of the pillars we think. So full persistence, we talked a little bit about it at the beginning of the day, but full persistence is the ability for you to go anywhere in the universe and, me drop this remote on the floor. Doesn't work, so I might as well drop it. There you go, right? So, and then I'm going to walk away, right? I'm going to walk out here. It's going to stream out. It's gone. And then I decide, you know what? I really want my remote again. And then it's going to remember that I dropped it. It's going to stream it back in, even if it was on the surface of a planet. And it'll be there, and I can pick it up in first person. And that's a big step for us to be able to do that. And so the full persistence combined with the object container stream and binding culling are, I think, things that will make the world alive. Because it's not just me dropping a remote. It's leaving a ship somewhere, or you got damaged in space with your ship, and someone rescued you. You went away, and you came back to get your ship and repair it, and then take it home. And we're going to, persistence in your hab. So you'll go there. You can see that you can move and interact with the objects. You can, find things on travels in space, take them home, bring them, leave them at your hab, or leave them in your ship. So the, physical inventories are going to be very important in the game going forward in terms of, being able to store and manage stuff. So the more you play, the more stuff you collect. If you're a hoarder, then you'll probably want to get a bigger room and space. And the other aspect of full persistence is the aspect of age, wear, and tear. So, I long time ago talked about Death of a Spaceman. That's very much on our roadmap and plan. And it's the ability for items, as they get used, to get wear. Things age. You as a character will age. And again, that's what full persistence is about. It's getting to this point that as you play the game, players in the game do things, and it persists. So this universe is not a theme park that gets reset every day that you come back and visit. This universe is a living, breathing universe that changes as players live in it and interact with it. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things. That's why we call it the persistent universe, is that it has a life and a persistence, and people's actions will mean something in it. And that's a very, very important part, the 11th pillar. And the last one, if we go forward, Paul, is server meshing. So when we get server meshing, that is, we think, the last piece of the puzzle to have the full game experience. And this is our ability to go, right now we have about 50 players on a server. We probably will be able to increase that number because of bind culling and stuff, but it's still going to cap out at a certain level. With server meshing, we'll be able to get to thousands of players playing concurrently in the same locations, star systems. They're not all going to be able to have 1,000 people dogpiling together. They won't be able to render it all at the same time, but you certainly will be able to have 1,000 people on the planet of Hurston, for instance. So the server meshing is the last key piece, because that will allow us to have a truly massively populated universe of players as well as AI, and having servers that dynamically scale up and down to take care of the processing needs of that. And so from our standpoint, in terms of what we would think is the experience when you guys can sit in and play the game day after day and not worry about it getting wiped, not worrying about, oh, I'm going to do something for a day or two and there's no point because they're going to reset the system. When we get to full persistence and server meshing, that's our marker. And sure, after that, we've got planets to do and star systems, and we're going to have continual feature development. But this is an
with courage, for honor, in strength, to glory.
While mind-bending velocity and nausea-inducing G-forces certainly have their charms, not everything at the IAE is about blinding speed and sexy silhouettes. The titans of industrial aerospace are all here, flexing their muscles. Take MISC. Their Freelancer series are perennial favourites of independent haulers, thanks to their famously ample cargo capacity and relatively small size. And with 4 discrete models to choose from, there's a Freelancer flavour for nearly every taste, whether you fancy auxiliary fuel tanks or a heaping helping of missiles. But MISC isn't the only industrially inclined contributor to this year's exposition. Argo Astronautics, for one, are not content to rest on their utilitarian laurels.
We don't have
super secret all-time
have a particular viewpoint in terms of, oh, that's it, this is where we finish it and we don't do any more work. It's like literally we kind of view, as long as you guys want to live in this universe, every 3 months we're giving you a build, and here you are, and here's a bit more, and here's a bit more, and here's a bit more. And when we get to the full persistence and server meshing, I think at that point, that's when we're not going to be resetting the servers. It's when it will be an ongoing living, breathing game. And that, I'm not going to give you a date, but but you can watch on our roadmap as we develop it, and just watch for that, because us internally, those are what we view as our sort of cornerstones that we need to get to. And yes, there's a lot of other things that we've talked about that we're also working on, but when we get that, we feel like it will be a game like no other. So that is kind of what we, in terms of road to release. But speaking of near-term release, 3.3, I think we're going to go wide to BTU. So as of today, so when you guys get home, everyone here will get access. I think we're going to open up to subscribers and concierge first, and then as long as things don't blow up too badly, then we're going to go full wide, and then we're going to keep hammering on it because we want to get 3.3 in everyone's hands as soon as possible, because of object-constrained streaming and bang culling makes a massive difference to the experience and performance. And once we get that stable, and we need a lot of people playing and testing it, because that helps us with chasing down all these sort of edge cases that are very hard to replicate. Then we're going to roll in the Hurston and Lawville aspect, which we showed earlier today. And I think it should be a pretty great patch when all that's said and done. And there's a lot of stuff in 3.3. I think we've talked about it, but it's quite a lot of new ships. I mean, I think it's probably one of our, and it's kind of fun. It's the first one we have a straight-to-flyable ship in the Valkyrie, which is cool. I think the Hammerhead's probably the biggest ship that we've got in the game at the moment, and it certainly has probably got the most firepower of a ship in the game. And you got the Phoenix, which is great to fly around with luxury, and then the cool new Mustangs, and all the Tumbril variants are really cool too. So I think it's going to be cool. I'm looking forward to you guys playing it. So that's that. If we just go forward, one extra thing we're going to do, and I don't think any other company that operates an online game does this, or I'm not aware of someone that does this, but we collect telemetry on, obviously, all the servers and all the clients that are connected to us. And so we get a good idea of what the frame rates are, what the machine specs are, what the latency is, what the load times are. And we've often had debates, because we see a lot of anecdotal, frame rate sucks, and everybody's frame rate sucks. And we're like, we're watching the data, and that's not exactly what our data says. So we decided that we wanted to give all you guys the ability to track the telemetry yourselves. So what we have is you can go into the website. This will release for 3.3, and we will have live telemetry on 3.3 going forward. You'll be able to see your machine, so where you start in the CPU score, where you sit in the GPU, it will tell you what your stats are. And we're going to be tracking, not all this stuff gets tracked right away, but we're planning on tracking the latency and the loading times. You'll see the crashes, and then you can track yourself against the heat map of everybody playing the game and see where you land, and see also kind of what the specs are here. So that's, in the spirit of open development, you guys are going to be seeing what we see in our control dashboards. And you can also sort of see, because PCs are challenging because everybody has a slightly different configuration, and you don't know if someone's Bitcoin mining on the side while trying to play Star Citizen or doing nothing, right? But it's quite interesting, and I have to say that we've had a few outliers on this where some people have had like Threadrippers that are just crushing it on 3.3. So it'd be pretty interesting, and the new Intel multi-core ones are doing pretty awesome too. So you guys will be able to track yourself against everyone else, and then longer term, not right away, but I think the next stage is we'll open this up so you can sort of see our server performance too. So you'll be able to track how the servers are doing, what the stability is, what their frame rates are. So when everyone's debating, it sucks or whatever, you just go to this page and see how it's going. So I think that should be really cool. So one more. Okay, I know you guys We're trolling me. So obviously I know there's a few people that care about Squadron 42. Well, it's going really well. I'm really happy with it. And you've seen actually today, if you've been in some of the panels, you've seen some of the tech we've been working on. Like if you went into the character panels, you went to this spacescaping one, even the cloth stuff that was happening. There's a lot of stuff we're developing specifically that goes into Squadron and then goes across into the PU. We're closing it down. All the remaining features were in content. And the last major technical hurdle that we were worried about on Squadron was object container streaming, which, as you know, we're almost ready to close out here on 3.3. So we don't have any major technical hurdles left on Squadron. So for us, it's a bit easier to get Squadron closed out than obviously Star Citizen that needs the server meshing and all the rest of stuff. So that's going. We're going to publish the public roadmap for you guys in December, all the way to completion of the project. And I'm just going to leave you with something right now.
We have Ali Brown, Mike Snowden, Ben Parry, and Mikhail Pietek.
Hi, everyone. So today we're going to be talking about space. But before we do, I'm going to kick things off with a quick trailer to show you what's to come. Cool. So I'm Ali Brown, Director of Graphics Engineering. I'm responsible for all of the graphics programmers in the company and all the visual technology. We've got Ben Parry, Senior Graphics Programmer, who does all the cool stuff that I wish I had time to do. Mike Snowden, our Director of VFX, sorry. And Mikhail, the Senior VFX Artist. So today we're going to talk about how we go about developing the technology and workflows to create the space environments. And we've been working on this for quite a while, and we wanted to improve our space. So as you all know, it's a space game. Space, in reality, it can be pretty boring. That's an actual NASA photo of Earth with not a lot between us and the moon. So that's real and all, but that's not what we want in our game, clearly, or not all the time. So here's Orion Nebula, actual photo from NASA, but this looks awesome. It looks great. It's the type of thing you might expect in a sci-fi film or game, but this isn't real, really. This has been brightened significantly from the NASA photo, and they've also used false colors where red, green, and blue are used to represent different elements. It doesn't look like this with the naked eye. It's also 24 light years across, and 1 billion times less dense than a laboratory vacuum chamber. So actually, if you were in this, it would be imperceivable to you, and it just really wouldn't be that fun to fly around. But nonetheless, we still type of have this perception. We want something like this. We want something visual to fly around in space. So that's what we wanted to explore as part of this R&D process. So here's some very early prototypes of a type of gas clouds, vaguely similar to that nebula. And our talented art team tried a bunch of different type of looks and styles of what type of shapes we could have in space. I'll just let these play out for a little bit. So these were developed in proprietary type of, type of volumetric rendering technology called FumeFX and Houdini. And these are using our gas cloud rendering system, which we've been developing for some time, and Ben will talk about a bit later on. And they look great. They're really interesting. But again, they have this type of fundamental problem of scale, where if you look at this, you might imagine that might be 100 miles or 1,000 miles, something like that wide. And if it's that type of scale, the scale of a moon or a planet, if you're flying through it, then there's really not going to be anything there. It's going to be like just in the middle of a cloud when you're in a plane. There's just nothing really interesting to explore at the type of conventional spaceship speed. So to demonstrate that, here's a QTing into a gas cloud. This gas cloud is about 300 kilometers wide. And while you QT, it looks great. But once you stop, there's nothing really moving other than these nearby asteroids. So again, it's a good backdrop, it's interesting, but it's not giving us that gameplay we quite wanted. So we plan to type of overcome this problem in two different ways. The first is planetary rings, which is similar to this, which is Saturn's rings. So these are huge, obviously, but however, they're extremely thin in reality. So Saturn's rings are only about 10 meters high on average. At the widest point is a couple of kilometers. So that's nice. That's the type of the scale that a spaceship can fly around, dodge between asteroids like you'd expect in a film. Yet they stretch for hundreds of thousands of miles. So Saturn is 120,000 kilometers wide, and obviously the rings extend much further than that. So that's type of an interesting play space for us. And obviously we have some simple asteroid rings in the game at the moment, but that's something that we definitely want to expand on. And because they're effectively 2D, they're relatively simple to author, and they give us a very easy mechanism of getting a good, interesting play space. However, that's not something we're going to focus on for the moment. Sorry, one more thing. So this is an artistic type of concept image for the type of thing that we might do for a planetary ring, just to add a little bit more interest. So obviously it looks pretty cool, and you can imagine flying through this in these little drake down there. So yeah, this is something we're really interested to develop, but we're going to be looking at this next year. This year, what we wanted to look at is something a bit more volumetric. So one of the problems with this,
to get a first look at their 2949 Mole multi-crew mining machine. It's not only a paragon of alliteration, but is being touted as an excavation revelation, with a more user-friendly control interface and sport-inspired stuff. Good news for all you aspiring diggers out there. Releasing in just a few weeks, you'll get to see firsthand the bonding experience that is simultaneous mining. Just like Jimmy and me. Next on Whitley's Guide, we behold the inscrutable curiosities of the Exotics Pavilion and the IAE Food Court. Don't go anywhere.
Friends, wait for the end of this video. Day 2, and tomorrow I'm blasting off to Microtech and the Intergalactic Aerospace. IAE, y'all know what I mean. Light workout before my Stormwall tour. I'm seriously so excited for this and want to say thanks again to Origin, my amazing sponsors. People are obsessed with these Stormwalls. See, I'm learning. The person in this costume, I mean, how adorable. I'm on this shuttle thing, guys, way less fancy than the Origin one and full of tourists. Real Stormwalls! They are seriously amazing. Got back on land and things started to get real weird. First off, some people full on ran into me. Red flag numero uno. Didn't even notice the Crusader security. Second red flag. Then in the middle of my food selfie, some randoms burst in and start shooting. Friends, this may be my last. Stay tuned for my next post to see if I survive.
3.9 is going to broaden the visual spectrum of Star Citizen a lot.
First moons we have built with Planetech V4 from the ground up.
You get caught, you go to jail.
You can pay off your debt to society, or you can try to escape.
The Caterpillar mission is really cool.
It's the first of our ship we've seen in game.
Hunger, thirst, and extreme temperatures, it all affects you now.
We are really, really excited to see how players respond.
It's effectively 2D, you could just fly anywhere straight away. There's nothing that's hidden, there's no type of journey within this. Once you're in the asteroid, once you're outside of it, you can just fly to any point and then just dive in. So it gives us something, but the designers were asking for something more, something where you could have like a journey, like a 20-minute adventure into some type of structure. So we started looking at more of a volumetric approach. And what we wanted to do was build networks of tunnels and chambers that are contained within a gas cloud. So like we had earlier, we saw them type of pretty nebula-looking things. We wanted to have something that looked like that from the outside, but inside we got something more like this, some of those like clouds, and we can dodge between things at like conventional speeds. So over about the last 2 or 3 months, we've had the graphics team, VFX team, and art team all coordinating together to make a prototype, which is going to showcase how we want to make future space environments. So I showed you a brief clip at the start. At the end of the presentation, we'll show you the full prototype. But first, we'll type of break down the technology and the workflows that go into it, and then save the good stuff for the end. So yeah, building volumetric data turns out to be really hard. But luckily, the film industry has solved this for us pretty much. There's lots of really great software out there that they use in the films. I mentioned before Houdini and Fume Effects. This is Houdini, I think. And they have really powerful tools so you can combine fluid simulations and multiple layers of noise to get these really interesting shapes. And it's exactly what they would do in film. So we take that data and we export it into a format called OpenVDB, which is something that was developed by the film industry, by DreamWorks Animations, for films such as Puss in Boots and a bunch of other ones. And now, once we export it into that, that's type of what we take into the engine directly, and then start convert it into our own format, and then we attempt to render that directly, which is something games don't typically type of take on that type of volumetric data. So that was the challenge for us. So, yeah, so we, as I mentioned, we generated offline tools, use fluid simulation, layers of noise. But one of the main problems with that is the amount of memory it takes for this volumetric data is pretty huge. So we have to put a lot of effort into optimizing that and crushing the data as small as we can get it. But it's still quite high. So to try and combat that, we're making modular pieces. So we're going to make say, 30, 40 kilometer long sections, and we're going to piece them together, which is similar to what the environment team do when they're building a space station or any other outpost or something like that. And we're going to type of position a few of these together to build longer, more elaborate missions and areas. And we'll also have bespoke, chunks, bespoke pieces when we want to do something a bit more interesting, especially, say, when it came to Squadron 42. Yeah. And then, to avoid you ever recognizing these things were actually sometimes reused, we're putting a lot of effort into how we light these things and the visual effects. Now, it's surprising how much difference you can really get by just relighting the same area of volumetric data differently. It's almost unrecognizable. And because there is no horizon, it's very easy to get disorientated. So it's not easy to recognize it. So we feel like we've hit a good balance between the memory cost, how quickly it is to author, because obviously the more we can reuse things, the more content we can make. But we'll talk more about the lighting and VFX later. But for now, I'm going to hand you over to Ben to tell you how the hell we get this thing in-game and actually render it at a sensible frame rate.
Hi there. So I'm just going to quickly run through sort of what makes a volume like this different from rendering normal objects and some of the challenges that we had to deal with and overcome, I guess, hopefully. Right, so this volume is a single object. It's about 30 kilometers long, so that's quite a lot bigger than your average object in the game. Also, unlike most of the other objects in the game, you're inside it most of the time. So to explain, hang on. These are the voxels. So they're basically volumetric pixels. And as you can see, there's millions of them. So yeah, after 5,000 hours in MS Paint, this is a diagram of what it looks like roughly. So, so ignoring the cloud for a minute, we've got 3 asteroids on screen here. And what the engine can usually do for us is we can pass objects to the 3D engine, and it's got some very efficient methods that it can sort of speed things up by reducing what we have to deal with on the rendering side. So if you look at the asteroid on the left, for instance, that's outside the player's view frustum. So we never hear about that for that frame. Also, the one on the right, that's occluded by the bigger one. So again, that just never has to be dealt with. And then the big one, we know how far away from the player it is. So at least we can pick a level of detail for it, and we can do stuff like that, I guess. Now, the gas cloud has a bit of a problem because it's occluded, it's disoccluded, it's 0 distance from the player, it's 30 kilometers from the player. If the rendering code gets hold of this, it's going to have to make loads and loads of work to try and process all of it, process half of it. So the solution we came up with is that we literally never tell the rendering engine or the 3D engine about this object. What we tell it about instead is a huge number of placeholder objects that we've excitingly called chunks. The volumetrics data is just chopped up, stuck in a big memory bucket somewhere else. And the chunks just know where they are in space, and they know where the data is. So you can treat them basically as game objects. And, back to another 5,000 hours in MS Paint. You can see the chunks in the middle in the empty space. We just didn't generate any because there wasn't any gas there, so there's no point processing them. The chunks that are far away from the player, we've actually got a hierarchy of chunks. So the small ones are contained within larger ones, and if they're far away, we just use the large one instead of the small one. So that sort of limits how many of them we have to process. And then when the 3D engine gets to it to cull it, you can see quite a lot of them aren't needed anymore. So that lets the CPU do a lot of work in advance, and then the GPU can just focus on receiving a list of chunks that have already been vetted and then just drawing them. So how do we draw a chunk? So the whole thing's semi-transparent. So it's unlike a normal object that's like some polygons. You draw the polygon in place, the job's done. You kind of need to accumulate all of the stuff that you can see through. So we're going to use ray marching for that. What that means is for every pixel that we draw, such as the middle one, we just draw a line from the start through the chunk to wherever it exits, or in the second chunk, it would just start at an entry point and go to an exit point. We'd just chop that up into a bunch of steps, and then we just process each step in turn, and we find out how much color's in one place. We mask it out by however much opacity has already been accumulated on the previous steps, and we just sort of build up a final image. So if we work through all of these with the artist's data that we've been given, we get this screenshot. So the artist's data doesn't actually contain any lights, so everything is in fact the same color. So moving on, let's talk about lights. What have I got? Oh, yeah. So just focusing on this one point that we're dealing with for a moment, we need to know a few things to be able to work out how much light there is for that section. So the first thing we need to know is how much gas is there at that point. That's easy enough to get. The next thing we need to know is how much light gets to that gas. So that's easy enough to do. We know how far away it is. We can make it fall off. Then finally, there's a phase function that just tells us if that light reaches the gas, how much of it actually comes towards the camera. And that's a fairly simple function. It just says if a light ray hits something, then a lot of it tends to go through in the direction it was going. A very small amount of it goes back the other way, and you get something in between. So here's an example of that phase function in action. This is just the same test volume viewed from two different angles. And so as you can see, on the one on the right, the sort of bright halo that it has around the edges, that's the phase function letting more of it through towards the player. So what was I going to say now? Yeah, so we've got all that work that we have to do for a point. And then if you multiply that by hundreds of samples and multiple lights per frame, what you end up with is a very, very low frame rate. And what's annoying about that is that 2 pixels next to each other, 2 pixels next to each other are basically getting the same result. So it's kind of pointless to be doing all that extra work. So the way we deal with that is we just break that into 2 separate calculations. At the start of the frame, we know how many chunks there are, and we've got distances and all that kind of useful knowledge. So we can estimate how much detail it's going to need in the lighting, and it just has to kind of calculate at some resolution, usually a resolution lower than the actual gas cloud density, how much light it needs in each chunk. So we just do that work once, and then the ray march can just pass through it. It just has to get the density, get the lighting, multiply them together, move to the next step. So that just speeds the whole process up. So yeah, that gives us this. So you can see a lot more than the previous screenshot, at least. It's kind of flat, though. You can't really see the shape that you're looking at. So the problem here is that there's actually no shadows in that calculation that we've done. So we're going to move on to shadows. So how do you work out how much shadow there is between the light and that point? So the problem with standard shadows that you use in a game is they usually store just a single depth value for an opaque object. That's usually enough. Anything in front of that depth must be out of shadow. Anything behind it's in shadow. And the problem we've got with this is obviously you could be in 50% shadow, you could be in 80% shadow or whatever. So we need something that we can calculate when the light's created that just tells us how much. You can immediately just ask it for any point, how much shadow is there at this point? So obviously the thing to do is we slice the light up into a load of little chunks. We ray march all of those at the start of the, at creation. And then, the GPU crashes. Yeah, we decided not to do that. Now, to be honest, we could actually split that work over 10, 100 frames or something. It would still cost a lot of memory, and it would also give us issues that, suppose you want a lightning strike that hits a ship as it's flying somewhere. You'd have to ask the gameplay code, where is that ship going to be in 100 frames time, because I'd like to start creating a light for it. And even then, there's just this huge piece of background work that it's constantly having to work on. So we thought, what if there was something we could be doing in 2D? Can we get away with something that just works in 2D? And what's nice about doing clouds is that if you look at, this is just a graph of how much density there is along that blue line. It's quite a low frequency kind of undulating shape. And so thinking about frequencies is actually a really good answer. So we switched to a technique that's called
through unforgiving lands, across the impossible expanse. A mirage calls, a distant oasis. We chase what most consider myth. Pursue an obsession. That's what pushes us to greatness. The Oasis. It's real. The 400i by Origin Jumpworks.
Ninetales attacks these commercial platforms. Gather any gear you need and help us take them back.
Basically, instead of storing a value for every single step along the ray, it stores how much would you multiply a whole bunch of sine and cosine waves by if you wanted to just sort of try and get that value? And then if you do that for every single step along the ray, you end up with a curve that kind of approximates the original shape. Depending on how many you put in, you get closer to the original shape. So with one weight, what you basically get is just the average value. So that's not so great. If you add one sine and cosine, you end up with something that's still not great. But as you build them up, you slowly get something that is sort of like the right shape curve. Now, we actually did stop at 7 weights because just in terms of the amount of memory and the amount of processing that we're trying to trade off, we found that was actually enough to get us from this view to this view, which we think is, is decent. Let's go back to that, and back to that. Right, so yeah, that actually now runs fast enough. We are still optimizing it a little, but it does run fast enough that you can now have a lightning strike that just pops up on that frame. We have to spend like a millisecond or something. I don't know how long it takes, but yeah, you can create them on the fly so long as you don't create like 50 of them in the same frame. The downside is it's still not quite the screenshot we started with. It's kind of monochrome. I think that's only 2 lights, but yeah, they're the same color, so it's kind of monochrome. So we needed something that doesn't introduce a whole load more processing, a whole load more data, but we wanted to sort of enrich it and give you more of a sort of 3D sense of the scene. So a really inexpensive thing to do is you just take this, you multiply all of those values by just completely artist-controlled sliders. So you can then just apply these color, you get kind of a color fringe on the edge of a dark area where, like in this case, the red won't have actually been as shadowed as the green just because we multiplied it down. So yeah, that is what takes you from this to this. Yeah, so this is still not as good as that trailer that we showed you. But the thing is, this is actually as much as I can helpfully do. So I'm just going to hand the baton over to the VFX team with Mike and Michal, and they can carry us the rest of the way.
Okay, so this is how the gas cloud looked. Fantastic stuff that Ben just showed there. And we were obviously really happy with the lighting, the visual fidelity, and the technical achievement of this thing. But inevitably, after showing it to art and design, and Ali alluded to this earlier, there were several issues that we're still going to need to solve. So the gas clouds are actually, because they're so big, you're tiny compared to this thing, they actually can be quite frustrating rather than fun to traverse because they feel so empty. And it's also really easy to lose your bearings. You don't really get any kind of visual read of the speed that you're going at. And because it's so empty, it doesn't really feel dangerous, and that's a really important thing that design and art really want to be able to kind of achieve. So typically, in a more standard environment, this is the kind of thing that we'd be able to solve with VFX. So in this slide, I'm showing basically an empty scene. It's just a block out. There's nothing really in there. And I'm just layering it up with different types of effects. So we've got lightning, and then we're bringing in volumetric fog. On top of the fog, there's going to be extra particles. I'll even bring some more in. GPU, screen space collision, get some cool noise, get some gravity, et cetera, and we'll even throw in some screen effects as well. So these are all the kinds of things, like I say, this is kind of a typical thing that we do, and if we can make that look great, it's a simple block out, then we surely should be able to do that with a gas cloud as well. So that's our goal. But how do we do that? And to explain a little bit about how we do that for something that's not quite as conventional, Michal's going to come and show us some stuff.
Hello. Okay, so we've seen that level, and now comes time to actually add some VFX to the gas cloud. But conceptually, gas cloud is kind of like a level, but doesn't have any walls, doesn't have any ceiling, and there is also no concept of up and down. So it's kind of mind-boggling how we kind of organize the space. It doesn't have any geometries to start with, so we cannot really attach VFX to anything specific. And also, there is nothing acting as a visual guide. So it's kind of like a level, but it's far less conventional. So let's take a look at the design feedback that we've been given. It's too easy to lose your sense of direction, speed, and distance. Ideally, what we could do is introduce like a flow of air that moves through the gas cloud. And we would have some particles moving through that flow of air. So if you stop, you look around, you can observe the direction of motion and find your way through the tunnel. And that could also add the motion that was missing in the example you've seen before. Next step is making the gas cloud look more dangerous. And it's kind of easy, but not really, because the example we've seen didn't have any distraction elements to it, so we can add them, like debris, rocks smashing into other objects and stuff like that. But also design wanted to define danger levels, so they wanted some areas which are kind of calm, others should be more dangerous, so you kind of want to escape from these areas faster. So how we go about doing that? Let's take a look at the first problem first. The new GPU particle system, if anyone been to the second stage before, I mentioned that it allows us to use so-called vector fields. Essentially, vector fields are snapshots of wind. So a vector field is a texture, a 3D texture, and each pixel of that texture is a vector in a specific direction. Then, if a particle flows through the vector field, we can sample that vector and push the particle towards that direction. So essentially, a vector field is like a snapshot of a wind. So here in Houdini, we can bring the actual gas cloud data. We can turn all the gas cloud into a mesh, use the Houdini's built-in particle system, flow all of them through the tunnel. Then we can save all that data and use in the engine to actually achieve that sense of motion. But vector fields are only about motion and direction, and there's still the danger problem that we have. So for that, we figured we need lightning and so-called electromagnetic interference. Oops. PowerPoint is not that easy. OK. So here we have the electromagnetic interference. It's minimum strength and maximum strength. Basically, it's a shader effect, and the way it's made, it allows us to do that kind of distortion on any type of screen in the game. So the idea here was to have more interference the closer you are to more dense areas of the gas cloud. Now it plays properly. OK, so same effect applied to mobiGlass without much effort, really. Again, the way that the effect was made. But the problem is, with this effect, that the first version of it was driven by the density of gas cloud. So you get more dense areas and less dense areas. And basically, we wanted to make denser areas more dangerous. So what we did is that we are sampling density of the gas cloud at player's location. The problem with that was showing you that you are in the danger area, and that's not quite useful. Design wanted to inform you that you're about to enter the dense area. And also, sampling the gas cloud density is not very efficient. So we had to come up with another solution. And for that, we use so-called sign distance fields. So the problem is that the gas cloud on its own doesn't have any walls. It doesn't have distance to anything. Ideally, what we would do is we would sample density of the gas cloud from all around you. Then we would kind of figure out if you're close enough to dense area, and then we kind of send that value to the shader and do the interference. But it's kind of slow. So sign distance fields. They are 3D textures which are storing distances to a nearest surface. So In a nutshell, it allows us to figure out if you are close enough to, or close to the dense area, the danger area, and we know it for cheap. And if we have this value, we can also drive lightning. But how we do distance in something that's a volume? So in Houdini, we can take the gas cloud data again. We can kind of mark these dense areas. So let's just say density is 0.9 and higher. We turn these areas into a mesh. Then we made a tool that is turning a mesh into the signed distance field. So it's kind of iterating through each pixel of that volume, and it's kind of asking, oh, how far I am from the mesh that we've made. Then all that is stored into a texture, and we can reuse it in the engine and drive that interference that you've seen. But we had all these kind of dynamic types of effects. There was also a need for art and design to be able to control and trigger set-piece events. So we still needed controlled, story-driven events. For example, you're flying through the gas cloud, suddenly there's lightning striking down a rock. So for that, we again used Houdini. Here we can see how a rock destruction is being made. So first we take the rock asset, we are defining areas in which rock will be split into pieces. Then we can use physics forces to animate that destruction. If we are happy with the result, then it's just a matter of UV mapping, and Houdini is really good at it, because we can quickly and easily UV unwrap like 50 pieces or so that we have in here. Then we can just export all of that back to the engine.
After eating the bear's breakfast, Goldilocks explored their house. She saw 3 chairs and wanted badly to rest her feet. But the first chair she tried was much too small. So she tried the second chair, and it was much too big. But when she tried the third chair, she found that it was just right.
Oh my god, what happened? My head. They must be like pirates. I'm gonna keep rolling, see what happens. The shuttle! There's my ride! Just gotta get over there. Oh, Crusader security. I'm saved! Sir, hey. Oh no. Ew, he killed him. Okay, Molly, keep it together. You got this. Ew, is that blood? Oh my god, nasty. This is seriously super disturbing. So much property damage. Like, where is the shuttle? That looks like it could get me out of here. If I could just make it over there. Yeah, you go over there. That's right. Don't turn around, don't turn around. Here goes nothing. Not sorry. That's not the shuttle.
So heading back to Mike.
I'm back again. Okay, so I'm going to talk about lightning, which is one of my favorite subjects. So yeah, lightning, it's a key visual requirement of gas clouds, both for art and design. So yeah, basically, previously we were able to create really nice lightning effects, but we didn't really have a lot of control over them. We could basically place them, and that was pretty much it. Leave them to it. They were also really expensive to use. So from the point of view of needing control, we developed several new options to allow us to do so, including the ability to have lightning automatically position itself